Happy Friday, SMITE fans. You are watching day number 2 of the SEC Phase 2 playoffs. We had a long day yesterday. 4 sets, 3 of them go the distance, all 3 games. Only one of them in North America going 2-0. Plenty of competition was had yesterday. Plenty of competition still to be had here today. 4 more best of 3 sets, but this time we've got some elimination matchups. My name is Dolson. Trelly Raley joins me to start off the day on the desk. And Trelly, do we imagine any pace of play changes? Look, yesterday, you're playing with a little freedom. If you lose, you still have this lower bracket run. But we're starting off both regions today, EU and North America, with some knockout games.
Yeah, I mean, yesterday you have this opportunity where you can kind of try some things out. You know, if you lose, there's a loser's bracket. You can still win your way back. Nowadays, if they lose, they're out. There's probably going to be not a lot less of these like comfort picks and more of things that we need to work. We need to get dubs, and we can't do anything risky. So I imagine a lot more laid-back play style. Probably no 50-50s on these Gold Furies early anymore.
Yeah, maybe we're flipping a few fewer coins on here today. Let's see what we have in store for the second day of the SEC Phase 2 playoffs. You got to look back at yesterday. As I mentioned, the first 2 games here in EU all go the distance, and that raises some eyebrows. You look at Elysium, this is a team that's only dropped 4 individual games and only 1 set all phase long, and they drop 1 more game to Cozyx Fanclub. So Cozyx Fanclub, they do end up losing that set. They'll be up in our first matchup of the day against Goodnight Nick, and then Elysium and Team Joystick in the upper bracket matchup will be right after that, and then we can get a look at that bracket. I believe production had a great name for these lower matches. The EU Losers Heartbreak match is what we're calling this one, between the Cozyx Fanclub and Goodnight Nick down there in match 3. And then, of course, the winner will move on and face the loser of our second matchup of the day. And that's very important. Look, there's kind of a 2-pronged approach to the importance of the matches today. One side, we got a knockout match. On the other side, in the winner's match, the winner moves on to the finals with that 1-game advantage in hand in a best-of-5 set. So both of the matchups, very important, have plenty of implications moving forward on into the weekend. So let's talk about this first matchup, because, Trelly, it's a kind of 1-2 punch between a team in Goodnight Nick that has beaten Elysium through the phase, not only in a game but in an overall set, and then Cozyx Fanclub, an SOC team that beat the SCC team, Pandemonium, to qualify for this event, and they came out, and we'll start with Cozyx Fanclub. They kind of shook Elysium a little bit there in that first game, and so I think maybe sneaky for Goodnight Nick here. You can't overlook this Cozyx Fanclub team.
No, absolutely not. I mean, I think everyone here in this tournament is able to take sets off everyone. They've already proven that, at least on this EU side. So when you look at Cozyx Fanclub, you're going to have to stop that dual lane. Vaporish can run away with the game. Yep. We saw that in that first set. And Rapio is a beast in the jungle. If you get a little bit of a lead, he's going to run away with it. So you got to make sure you shut down that early lead and just play safe and not let them get that small lead, because then they just go. Yeah,
this Camazot's pick has been very popular throughout the weekend, and this was early in Game 1. This is how our weekend started, was jumping on Trix Tank and making some of that aggression and the way that Trix Tank likes to play. You got to punish that, and that's what Cozyx Fanclub were able to do. I was intrigued by the by some of the solo lane picks that we saw. Don't know if we'll be seeing those throughout the rest of this weekend, but I think Gunter as well, and you see him in this highlight reel grabbing a killing spree, getting some damage in those fights. The mid lane for Cozyx Fanclub, I guess if you look, Trelly, at Game 1 and half of Game 2, was actually pretty good. Game 3, kind of brush under the rug, I think, for this Cozyx Fanclub team. But I think Gunter out of the mid lane is another strong point for this team that they can lean on.
Exactly. I mean, the Tiamat is something that you're always going to find a lot of success with, but Gunter piloted flawlessly. And the thing is, this was when they still had something to lose. Now,
right.
This is where everything is on the line. They're going to have to try to get these picks that they need, and they're not going to be able to try any wonky stuff like they've been doing. So they're going to have to just tighten the screws here.
And it is worth mentioning, and I told Mifflin yesterday I have to, Vaporish Coast, the Pentakid, got a pentakill on Mifflin in the past, and that is my one time of mentioning it. We've checked that box now that Vaporish Coast is in this game. Good night, Nick. Now, this is an interesting team in a good way out of EU, where this is the 3rd seed EU team, but this is a team that has competed with Elysium and Team Joystick all year long. Deathwalker, Ice Ice, Wolfie, Emilzy, and Streaka. Plenty of talk around this team. Their kind of calculated, interesting play style. And I want to start with Deathwalker here for this Goodnight Nick team because you look at, I mentioned kind of eclectic solo lane picks. I think Deathwalker has that in his back pocket there as well. But it was when they swapped to the Cerberus, I think, where we felt like Goodnight Nick really flourished out of that solo lane. So I think Deathwalker and getting those picks right today will be very important.
Yeah, I think that, he tried out the Mulan, which he's had lots of success with in the past, but again, it just couldn't work out, right? So I don't think this is going to be something, if he feels like it's actually that confident, I don't think this is something he should whip out here. I think like those Cerberus, those tanky picks, if he can get a Cthulhu or something like that, I feel like they'll find a lot more success with something like that right now because I just don't think the Mulan is really hitting the mark yet.
What's your take on this duo lane here for Goodnight Nick? Because we talked about Calvin, Vaporish Coast for the Cozyx fan club. Emilzy plus Streak Up. Name recognition-wise, I think expectations got to be at an all-time high. But with how important the duo lane is for Cozyx fan club, do you think Emilzy and Streak Up match up pretty well into the duo lane on the other side?
Of course. I mean, they can definitely hang, but the thing is, Emilzy, for me, has been super hit or miss, where if he's on, the whole team, he can bring them up with him. Yep. If he's going aggressive, he's hitting these stuns, he's hitting the setup, the whole team just benefits from it. But if he's off, they seem to not be able to find these engagements, and then the whole team falls for it.
And this is where emotions, those sorts of things can start to boil up, because as we've mentioned, in our first matches yesterday, you got this life raft that is the loser's bracket. We are moving into what is going to be the final set of the weekend for one of these two teams, into the first round of picks and bans for the EU losers heartbreak match, as we've coined it here, between Goodnight Nick and the Cozyx fan club. Goodnight Nick going to be starting off picks and bans in that first pick slot. That's going to leave Cozyx fan club on over to that second pick. I think we've seen kind of an established trend so far this weekend, Trelly, where Cthulhu, Morgan, Nike, those three, Odin, has usually fallen into that category, and then maybe some flex potential moving forward from that. A bit of a divergence from that, though, with Heimdall and Izanami both banned out in the first couple, so Hunters are taking a bit of a hit early on.
Yeah, we've been seeing in this EU circuit especially that whenever the Uller, which has been very prioritized in that dual line, gets picked, the snap block is the Izanami. For some reason, That's what they want to go to here. I guess they just want to counter the early pressure with more early pressure. It makes sense to me, but maybe if they're trying to get that Uller, take away the Izanami ahead of time, makes sense. And the Morgan, obviously, that's something we've come to expect by now.
Yep. Heimdall, I think, is a ban aimed at Vaporish Coast, because we have seen Coast play Heimdall, and it has looked very good on a frequency of occasions for that player. So, taking one thing away from one of the better hunters here in this matchup for Goodnight Nick. Tiamat is going to follow there as well as the Geb on the other side, and so we're sticking with some normalcy for the first few bans. Odin will round out our first 6 bans here, so there's a lot still available for Goodnight Nick. If you really prioritize that Cthulhu, if you really prioritize that Nike, both are standing there. That also offers some flexibility here for Goodnight Nick. You leave both of those solo laners open. You can go something else in that first pick. You won't. Cthulhu's going to get locked in first.
That's exactly what I wanted to see there. Seeing Deathwalker on the Mulan, I wanted to see him be that aggressive man, that player that I know he is, and it just didn't work out. And this is what we wanted to see. I want to see Deathwalker on this Cthulhu going in, establishing that lane dominance.
Yep.
This is how we know he can play, and this god is going to let him do just that.
And that means that Ul is left open as well, so Uller will end up being the pick for the Cozyx fan club here. Can delay, again, if Nike ends up being your answer here in the solo lane, you can delay that a little bit further. I think the odds of Goodnight Nick picking both Cthulhu and Nike pretty low, so you can maybe leave that Nike towards your third and final pick in this wave if that's what you have your eyes on. And aggression around Uller becomes pretty important. We know what one axe plus the full rotation of abilities can do in that lane on its own, but now you pair it with something like the Bacchus that has seen a couple of games played this weekend. 100% win rate, by the way, there, Trelly. So Uller and Bacchus, that's going to be in your face pretty early.
That's a lot of CC. That's a lot of early damage. Fafnir, also a lot of CC, a lot of early damage, but I think that duo lane, there's going to be, I don't think there's anything that Goodnight Nick can really pick here that's going to be able to deal with Uller Bacchus early.
Yeah.
They just have a lot of CC, and that Uller axe into the flop, either way, whichever one you want to go, it's going to be a lot.
Are you picking Bacchus at this point just for lane pressure? I mean, I know late game, you get all the mitigations, protections online. Bacchus so tanky, so hard to kill. Why are we seeing so much Bacchus so far this weekend?
I mean, I liked him into the Awelix, right, where they were like, we have a lot of leaps already. I'm going to get this leap in there, so maybe I can take some of that pressure away, because if you use both leaps at the same time, Awelix can only pull one.
Yep.
So now we're picking it when there's a lot of other options available, so I think they're just really prioritizing that early pressure.
Yep, early pressure plus Uller feels good. King Arthur, talk about some pressure in lane there as well. So it looks like we're stampeding our way into a Cthulhu King Arthur lane over there in the soul lane, unless something crazy ends up happening throughout the final few picks here. Morgan Le Fay gets snap blocked in here for Goodnight Nick. So one side still needing their mid laner, the other not. Soul takes a ban here as well. We started to see some Soul, and whereas the Cozyx Fanclub in their final 2 bans, looking towards the jungle, taking away some of that. Morgan Le Fay, I think, is an interesting pick here with, outside of Tiamat and Morrigan. Always got to be careful with that. The Morrigan banned out, not Morgan. Tiamat and the Morrigan both banned away. Morgan Le Fay becomes the priority pick here. For a while, that was not surprising. Morgan Le Fay kind of had faded out a little bit. Now maybe back in the conversation for one of the best mid laners.
Right. Well, right now what I see is a Morgan Le Fay getting dove by a Bacchus and a King Arthur. Both characters that have these long channeled abilities. One of Morgan Le Fay's strengths, she has a fear that can cut both of those out. She's not going to get stunned by the burp. She's not going to get damaged by those spins as long as she silences effectively. So that's a great strat. And we got the Raijin here, which is another strong pick.
Yeah, brawl to be had in the mid lane here. Morgan Le Fay plus Raijin, or rather Raijin plus one of a few picks has really been what I expect to see out of the mid lane here as of late. Raijin plus Morgan Le Fay is going to be the battle this time around. Still needing a jungler, our Goodnight Nick. No longer, though. Robin ends up getting picked in. And I think, and this is something Mifflin and I have talked about a little bit, where you look at Robin to get aggressive early, but it's not like Robin suddenly gets horrible as the game goes on. But it is the type of pick where you can get active early and set your team up for success.
Right. I mean, with the overhand kick, you have so much. You're safe, right? You have that immunity then there. And then with how strong jungle items are, you're not going to fall off. You get a Heartseeker, get your Bumba Spear, you're going to be chunking no matter what. So Robin, I think, is just always a solid pick, especially into this Raijin. You can be able to ult onto those Tycho drums. He can't fear you away. You're CC immune in the Mystic Rush. It's a great dive.
I mentioned that I thought it would be a King Arthur Cthulhu Soul lane. I think it still is. Nike does end up getting picked, but we have seen Nike out of the jungle here a few times. I don't want to assume the build that Nike jungle will be going for here, but it feels like we've kind of seen the nuke play style. You build a lot of damage, you jump in, you try to delete some of that backline. Do you think Nike jungle can be as effective as a Nike soul lane, or is it just kind of a difference of effectiveness?
Oh yeah, I mean Nike jungle we've been seeing more and more recently as it had some favor back in the day, but now that it's come back strong because of these mace trees. And I mean Nike's a sick dive into Morgan Le Fay. You can immune a lot of her CC with that ultimate, and then you can just nuke her. So I do like the Nike jungle, and I see the potency.
We'll see if Cozyx Fanclub can claim success with Nike jungle. Game number 1 of the EU Losers Heartbreak match with Aggro and Mifflin.
Thank you, Dave and Trelly. That's right. We got our first elimination match of the LAN here between Goodnight Nick and the Cozyx Fanclub. And Mifflin, that Goodnight Nick go to a lot of comfort picks. Fafnir for Emilzy, Morgan Le Fay for Wolfie, and Cthulhu for Deathwalker.
I'm excited for this one, but you didn't talk about the one pick that I like to talk about, Aggro.
Oh, it's Robin.
Yeah, let's talk about Robin.
Do we have to?
I mean, we should.
Okay,
You've
go
got
ahead.
plenty of experience playing against my Robin.
Yeah, unfortunately.
How did that feel?
Not great, because I played Zeus, and that is an unwinnable matchup for Zeus. You just can't play it.
That's your fault. Fortunately,
True.
the Robin doesn't have a Zeus to chase down, and it is a Raijin, so maybe some safety for Gunter in the mid lane, but I'm keeping my eyes on Ice throughout the entirety of the early. For my money, he is going to be one of the most effective gods on the map, like pre-level 7. So, as Dave said, you don't necessarily have to get involved early. You don't fall off super hard, but you're probably the strongest right now, so you've got a little bit of responsibility to your team.
And Goodnight Nick, for what it's worth yesterday, were very aggressive in the early stages. Not necessarily in killing gods, but in killing enemy buffs. They were consistently in the enemy side of the jungle and forcing the issue up against their opposition. So maybe we'll see a little bit more of that here today up against this Cozyx Fanclub team that really impressed up against Elysium yesterday. Remember that Cozyx Fanclub is the SOC competitors. They beat the number 4 seed in the European SCC in order to earn the right to be here to play. They dominated Elysium in game 1 of their set, then got dominated in the subsequent 2 games, but we've seen the pedigree that this team has.
It's a lot of early game pressure rooted from what you're seeing on the screen right now. This duo lane likes to get involved around that first purple buff respawn. It's invade after invade that has generally net them leads throughout their matches. So Vaporish Coast playing the Ul on one of his signature picks, one of the best picks in the current meta. You've got some high expectations for him. And looking at his build, it's gone a little bit different. Generally, we see the Hunter's Cowl into the Maze Tree or even perhaps the Transcendence. Instead, it's Bumba's first overall.
Going for that Bumba Spear later on. Is Uller what he pentakilled you with? I can't remember.
No, it was Hachi, I believe.
All right. Yeah, I remember it was some god that he pentakilled you with. Remember when he pentakilled you?
I sure do.
He killed you and then all 4 of your teammates.
And not only was he popping off, his dad was popping off on me. You were popping off on me as a caster.
I was.
It was tough.
It was awesome. I loved it. Vaporish, a little bit poked out because Emilzi's been awfully aggressive in this lane. I think that this Goodnight Nick team really took a step forward whenever Emilzi joined. I mean, his pedigree in the SPL nearly unmatched among supports, one of the best leaders we've seen in the SPL, and right away he's getting lane dominance for his side, which is not something you expect up against the Uller.
Not something you'd expect with Fafnir either. I mean, it's very easy to block that hammer, even if you are taking that poke early on. Hachimon's follow-up, not as strong as some of these other Hunter selections, but Emilzi doing a great job of establishing that pressure and immediately leveraging it with a purple buff invade thanks to the help of Ice.
Raphael trying for a speed buff invade, but Wolfie gonna sniff that one out, come over and defend his jungler's speed. That's one way to earn your jungler's trust, is to go over there and defend the speed buff early. And immediately Goodnight Nick have control of the map. Not a lead for them. In fact, it's Cozyx Fanclub who seem to have eked out a gold lead so far, but still feel like it's been Goodnight Nick that have gotten the pressure in the majority of these lanes.
Yeah, Goodnight Nick have been able to find the first successful buff invade, but meanwhile, on the other side, Rapio was at least able to strip away back camps as well as that solo side Harpy. Kind of reminiscent of what we saw from Sino yesterday. Just a lot of solo lane emphasis playing around this King Arthur, maybe trying to shut down Deathwalker before he becomes that late game paragon in your team fight.
Deathwalker has been phenomenal on this Cthulhu pick, as has basically everybody that's locked it in. It is just dominated when it comes to the team fighting stage, and so often we talk about who can actually effectively kill this Cthulhu, though I don't think the killing's happening there. It's happening on this left-hand side. Calvin still has the belly flop and will end up getting out. Ice level 5, heavy mace. A little surprised he doesn't just blink on someone there.
I think he was just trying to bait out the leap, but uses the Prana Onslaught mid-jump from Calvin. Had he saved it, used the Mystic Rush to chase out, pretty likely that we could have seen that first blood go their way, but instead, after whiffing Prana Onslaught, really not much for you to chase out there.
Not too much, as Bevy Monster now taking over the mantle of invading on this right-hand side. The one weakness of Cthulhu is that he's not really going to dominate you in the laning phase by any stretch of the imagination. He's really set up for those team fights. That allows a lane-dominant pick like a King Arthur to maybe wrest away control of this right-side jungle, and immediately you're seeing the effects of these right-side invades. Ice a little bit behind Rapio on the Nike.
He is, but at least able to show up and make sure that buff does go to Deathwalker. That's going to go a long way to keep your Soul Laner comfortable throughout the early phase of this game. I'm keeping my eyes on the rotations out from the Soul Lane. I think both of these gods very strong once they do decide to make that decision, but Bevy Monster going to hit his stride a little bit more quickly. I think he could transition himself to a slightly more hybrid build if he so chooses, as he is not under a lot of risk from Deathwalker in the lane, and instead maybe he goes towards damage in that third or second slot. Those rotations towards Gold Furies or early Scorpions, Pyromancers could be pretty impactful from the King Arthur.
As I was saying earlier, I think Cthulhu has really dominated the meta to the point where it's warped picks and bans a little bit and changed the way that people are trying to prioritize gods that can actually kill him, because that is not a foregone conclusion, even for your typical damage dealers. Do you think that Cozyx Fanclub have drafted enough in order to actually take down this Cthulhu?
Oh, it's not going to be easy with their composition. They don't have the greatest tools for it, but poke from a range, pretty nice. One way to deal with Cthulhu is to damage him before he's able to descend into madness, and gods like Ul can put in a fair deal of poke. Once you've got that full Maze Tree, the Heartseeker as well, Hail of Arrows, Bladed Arrows, very long-range threatening tools, and if he's able to connect 2 rotations of it before a team fight around these elongated neutral objective engagements, Makes it a little bit less appetizing for Cthulhu to just put himself in the middle of your backline. Short of that, I don't think Raijin deals with him too well. Ull's auto attack's not the greatest for it. Maybe Cozyx Fanclub put themselves on a timer.
Definitely going to be difficult to take him down, as Calvin actually managed to steal away that Greater Scorpion. That Belch ends up getting that last tick of damage necessary in order to get it. And this pacing is a little bit more reminiscent of what we saw during the regular season in the European Challenger Circuit. Much more composed through the early stages, a little bit less wild than what we sometimes see from the North American side. But these teams have become very accustomed to just out-team fighting their opponents, and that's what it looks like both teams are trying to do, is Calvin not going to be in range to contest these orbs any longer.
But between these two teams, Cozyx Fanclub generally in the SOC was playing a much faster pace. So if it's about comfortability, Goodnight Nick's got it. They are much more comfortable with the pace of this game so far. I think Cozyx Fanclub could very well benefit from getting involved a little bit earlier on. Maybe that Robin pick from Ice is kind of acting as a deterrent. Don't want to fight when Robin's the strongest on the map.
And that level 7 mark is where you deemed him the strongest up until.
He's good.
Maybe things can change now that Rapio beginning to scale a little bit better. Is Calvin trying to get this purple buff and does secure it with use of that Intoxicate. Emilzy going to follow him over the wall, and here comes Streak up on the horse as well. Calvin blinks out, and that will avoid first blood for Goodnight Nick.
Yeah, the slow not quite enough from the ultimate from Hachiman, and Emilzy not able to close that gap. Calvin, phenomenal blink to maintain his own life and lose out on an engage tool, but I'd argue making sure you're not first blooded, probably pretty valuable.
Yeah, got purple, got 2 ults, and got out. That's not too bad, I'd say, for the Cozyx Fanclub, as Goodnight Nick take the consolation prize of the Draugr. But here comes Ice once again, not on a ward. Vaporish pretty far forward, gets back baited, and Emilzy gonna go for it, but way off the mark on the Mystic Rush. Coast, good, not only on his life, but on returning some damage back Ice's way.
Yeah, Ice can just go ahead and head back to base now. No shot, he sticks around at about 1/3 HP, and you gotta get more from this Robin. The ultimate, had he just aimed it slightly to the left, would have connected, and he very well could have found first blood for his team, saving the Prana Onslaught this time. For the post leap, it seems like he learned his first lesson. Now he's got the second one. We'll see if he can put them together and find a kill a little bit later on.
And it's already starting to fall behind pretty significantly. You look at the XP per minute charts, Rapio near the top, Ice near the bottom, only barely edging out Calvin, both level 8 right now. Level 10 for Rapio on this Nike jungle, as it's Deathwalker now in trouble, picked up by Bevy Monster, but he's got the ultimate still, and he's going to pop it just to get everybody off his back, and it seems like it's just in the name of securing this blue buff, but Deathwalker has de-transformed. Rapio still with the Blink ult, but holding on to it for now.
Poor ability rotation from Cozyx Fanclub there may have cost him another first blood opportunity. Rapio using the Ren during Bevy Monster's ultimate means that you've lost out on one of your highest DPS abilities on that side of the map, especially considering, as you highlighted, Nike is already level 10, does already have the Jotuns, and moving in to another Mace, but forcing out Descent into Madness isn't the worst tool. It's a little bit hard to really find value off of that cooldown right now, considering Deathwalker, pretty unlikely he rotates out, so it's not as if he's going to be missing out on it in a team fight, but if Rapio decides to, can rotate back in and try yet again to shut down this Cthulhu.
Breastplate of Valor may be the saving grace there, as Coast finds the axe into the combo. Emilzy's hammer a little bit wide left, and Streak Up doesn't want any part of it anymore, despite Coast being very low on mana. That Uller combo already swinging, and it's going to keep on swinging harder.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure Streak Up has missed his opportunity for 1v1s. This Hachiman has only got his eyes on the team fight. As it stands, Vaporish Coast not only wins the poke war, but actual barrel stuff competitions, he's going to win the DPS war in that as well, which is why we see Streak Up trying to shift up the build a little bit. It's Crusher into what I can only assume is going to be an Aussie for some sustain in these team fights, whereas Vaporish Coast sticks with a tried and true Jotun's Wrath, Transcendence, maybe we go directly into some more maces afterward.
Calvin positioning aggressively, despite knowing that there are numbers here in force, but that's because Rapio is in tow. Gunter with some mid lane priority as well, but it's just poke from the Cozyx Fanclub. They haven't gotten a kill, neither side has, but it's still nearly an 1,800 gold lead for Cozyx Fanclub. Despite not a lot of successful buff invades, it's been getting bigger on the golden experience differential.
I think it's because Goodnight Nick have been trying more often to find ganks in the early game. Ice shows up in the dual lane, 2 splits or 3 splits with his laners, whereas Rapio is just sitting in the jungle, just farming up, trying to invade on this solo side, has been able to control the Harpies relatively well as Emilzy takes some poke in mid, returns more so onto Gunter. I'm expecting a long one here, Aggro.
I think so too. Bevy Monster picks up Deathwalker once again, but once again, it is blue buff secured by Goodnight Nick. Bevy Monster will end up baiting out that Descent into Madness, maybe looking for more as Ice Ice has the ultimate, but here comes Calvin, and here comes Rapio. Wolfie and Emilzy also in tow, and the numbers, despite being in Goodnight Nick's favor, are not enough to make them try and push forward.
Feels like every fight on the Soul Lane is a game of red light, green light. Green light when he's not descending into madness, Deathwalker that is. Red light otherwise. And every single time Cozyx Fanclub shows up, he immediately uses the Cthulhu ultimate, forces him back, and then just resets.
Blink forward from Rapio, looking for Wolfie. Good Dragonfly's going to get some peel going, and the Tycho drums, good damage, but not good enough. Emilzy's jumped in off that Draconic Corruption, and that should spell first blood. Rapio claims it. In 12 minutes in, Cozyx Fanclub are on the board.
Must have been a miscommunication from Emilzy there. Goes in completely on his own. Ice Ice does not want any part of it. Streak Up not in range. Wolfie too low HP and sitting inside of his own tier 2 tower. Had Emilzy just turned on his heel, 180, jumped the other direction. We would have had a net wash talking about how another first blood escapes both of these teams, but instead Cozyx Fanclub put their first on the board.
Ice Ice does not get hit by that axe, but that hail of arrows certainly sends him packing. He's going to head back to base, and Streak Up has only the option to do the same as his purple buff gets invaded. Cozyx Fanclub now, just with that first blood bounty, a couple of buff invades on the back end of it, have made themselves a real lead. 2,000 gold, 12 minutes in.
Emilzy no ultimate, Streak Up ultimate down as well. This could be an opportunity on reset from Cozyx Fanclub to try and force an engagement around this Gold Fury. It's not exactly the pacing that we're used to in the European SEC. They like to nurse these leads until a late game team fight, but I think this could be an opportunity for them to take it. Every single time Streak Up steps into range of Vaporish Coast, Mans loses 50% of his HP. Same could be said of Ice Ice from just the bladed arrow. I think this could be a time.
Bevy Monster blinked after Ice Ice, but Ice Ice with a good overhead kick actually keeps him out of combat as he didn't hit, and he didn't get hit, technically, so he's able to blink out right away. Bevy Monster still undeterred in the 2v1, looking for Ice Ice, who's already used the ultimate, but Deathwalker secures the blue and is going to descend into madness and try and punish Bevy Monster for his transgressions, but spoiler alert, he won't. That's a King Arthur with plenty of HP.
Maybe Streak Up on the other side can feel some threat inside of his own tower. Vaporish Coast, this is where he plays, and he has not changed his style for years. He'll take any tower shot that he can as long as he thinks he's able to return some damage, and this is something he's been doing since the console days. Given this opportunity, Vaporish Coast is opening himself up to some ganks. Ice Ice has not hit pay dirt on the left side of the map, but I don't think he can let off if Vaporish Coast is going to keep playing like this.
Gold Fury pulled by the Cozyx Fanclub, and Emilzy and Ice Ice more interested in securing their red, understandably so. Gunter's Tycho drums will help secure, and it is a Gold Fury at the 14-minute mark for the Cozyx Fanclub. That's going to push their lead nearing 4,000 gold. And all of a sudden, this early game has gone horrendously for Goodnight Nick. You were saying you wanted to see Cozyx Fanclub turn up the heat a little bit with their composition. Is this enough?
I'd say so. It wasn't exactly turning up the heat so much as them discovering a lead, just kind of walking down the road and picking up a stray tenor on the street. That's the Gold Fury for them. But now, I think the Cozyx Fanclub have jumped the early game. We're past the mid game. Now's the time to continually push this lead. You've got a 2-level lead in the jungle, 1 level in ADC, 1 level in support, 1 level in mid. These guys have got experience across the board. Let's get to the Pyromancer. Let's get to this Fire Giant. Force some engagements. Go for some heavy-handed invades, because as it stands, Cozyx Fanclub is doing a good job, but they're doing it at a slow pace. If they could just push the envelope, force Goodnight Nick to respond and answer some questions, could be an opportunity to push this lead even further.
Ice Ice has gone for a scaling build now with Transcendence second on the Robin, but he is still near the bottom in both gold per minute and XP per minute. It's going to be a while before that Transcendence is finished, whereas Coast, a laner, of course, going to be able to stack it much more quickly.
Must be nice.
But has it at 49 stacks, just 1 creep away from getting that sweet, sweet CDR.
And is the last creep going to be the Draugr? That's a stylish way to do it for him. Yeah, okay.
Yes, sir.
Congratulations on your upgraded Transcendence and your level 15 pool. He is swinging. Axe is going to one-shot just about anybody. If Wolfie doesn't have beads, he's dead. Same can be said of Streak Up or even Ice Ice. So I'm expecting maybe we see Vaporish Coast try and rotate out of this lane shortly, as there is a slight grouping on the right-hand side from Cozyx Fanclub. They've established a defensive ward on the Fire Giant pit, so if they do elect to pull the Pyromancer. Goodnight Nick will realize it, as they've got a positional ward as you rotate in towards it, but they don't have HP on it. Cozyx Fanclub can force Goodnight Nick to walk up.
Rapio and Bevy Monster setting up for a dive. This
That's like a
is
Cthulhu.
ambitious from Cozyx Fanclub. And here comes Emilzy. Hammer onto Rapio that does good damage, as Emilzy has a Divine Ruin in the second slot, and Rapio's actually going to pop that Sentinel of Zeus, whereas Bevy Monster has not gotten the memo. He goes in with that Caliber's Wrath, but it's a little bit off the mark, and now he's on the run. Emilzy gonna transform. Mystic Rush lands on the Bevy Monster, but the King Arthur still standing for now until Emilzy finally is gonna be able to put Goodnight Nick on the board, but here comes the re-engage. Rapio blinks in, Calvin right behind him. They're looking at Ice Ice.
Ice Ice gonna fall down pretty quickly to the double knockup. Gunter joins in with the triple jump in, but Emilzy's got some good damage.
Huge damage onto Gunter, and now Wolfie has joined the fray as well. Calvin knocked up, feared as well, but he's still got the belch, stunned at the last second, and Wolfie gonna unleash the ultimate, but very little damage coming from that ult. No pen in the build quite yet for Wolfie, and it's a tier 1 tower for Goodnight Nick, a 1-for-1 trade, but Goodnight Nick the one's looking healthier.
All right, I'm just keep the camera on Vapor's Coast. I want to see what he's setting up here. He is trying to find Streak Up in the jungle, but while we wait for this, why did Bevy Monster go in, Aggro? Why?
Can't help himself. Just like Coast can't help himself. But look for this play. But Streak Up, he's played against him before. He's going to
So
dash
toxic.
away. Hey, bro, why not? I don't think Streak Up has any relics, by the way, so this tells me, yeah, he doesn't. So Coast definitely got the better end of a boxing match not too long ago and is able to zone Streak Up away from his own tower, which does fall to the pressure from the minions.
Vapor's Coast never change, buddy. You've been playing this way for 5 years. Why not 5 more? Just playing as aggressively as he can, and this lane is able to strip away that tier 1 tower in the duo, as well as zone Streak Up off of 3 or 4 minions, just pushing that XP lead up to 2 levels now. This Uul sitting comfortably at 18.
And we were asking if Ice Ice can come by and maybe give some help to Streak Up, but now the answer is a definitive no. He's got a 4-level deficit to Coast and to Rapio, for what it's worth. So
It's too much.
This Robin, I mean, look, Robin from ahead, awesome.
Super good.
Super good. Robin from behind, maybe one of the worst gods in the game.
Okay, I'm not going to go that far.
What does Robin bring from behind? Nothing.
He's got
a root.
He's got a root. He's got a
single
slow.
target root.
He's hard to shut down. Good gap close. Look at that. Who else is avoiding that?
Who cares? He's not worth a whole lot, man. I mean, he's just not going to bring that much. At least with something like Nike Jungle, you're a tanky frontliner. You can block some autos. You've got a knock-up. Your best case scenario is that you can apply your Mystic Rush passive so that your target takes more damage from someone else who can do the damage for you.
And that's pretty good. That's what Nemesis does, and we love that pick, man.
Yeah,
You're
that's
just a Robin hater.
That's a point and click, bro. You got to get in
oh,
there.
you're mad that you have to aim Robin's ultimate.
Ice Ice is. You see the first pick.
Come on, bro.
Sorry, man.
This is an elimination round.
We had a long day yesterday, okay? I woke up and chose violence, I suppose. As the Primal Fury spawns, Cozyx Fanclub have dominated the map outside of a little skirmish on this right-hand side. And I think that's telling for the recipe for success for Goodnight Nick. Get Cthulhu involved. The one fight he's actually been there for, things went better.
Well, to be fair, that fight was kind of weighted towards Goodnight Nick, considering how it started.
Agreed.
Cozyx Fanclub just got over-aggressive, and when I say Cozyx Fanclub, I mean Bevy Monster. It was one individual member of the team that kind of puts the whole squad in a bad position. We'll see how this Gold Fury engagement goes. I think it's going to be very telling for the rest of this match. Cozyx Fanclub still sitting at a very comfortable, just about 5,000 gold lead. Could push it even further. And now that we've approached the 20-minute mark, the Primal Fury passive, giving you additional damage and damage mitigation up against these larger jungle bosses, is going to come into play in a huge way. So even if a fight erupts around the Gold Fury right now, we're not fighting over the Gold Fury. It's all for the Fire Giant.
Always is, I suppose, at the end of the day. Interesting switch up in the build here for Streak Up. Normally we see Wind Demon after the Yassi. This time it's Dominance. Typically it's Wind Demon into Dominance. Why do you think we see the switch up for him?
Maybe just worried about his ability to deal with some of these tanky targets on the side of Cozyx Fanclub. Calvin has additional damage mitigation from the Chug. Bevy Monster playing King Arthur is likely just going to be able to sit in front of you the entirety of the time. And it seems like he's elected to just not go for Wind Demon whatsoever. Maybe no crit in the build. He's just going full tank shred this time around. But I think that he likely would have been better served by a kin size in that slot.
Definitely can be good. There's a knock-up onto Emilzy as Rapio comes up and over the wall. Level 20 for both Rapio and Coast, and they've both finished off Bumba's spears. So all of a sudden, their objective damage just shot through the roof with the pickup of those 2 upgraded starters. And off to the Primal Fury they go, as expected. Coast absolutely slamming it. This thing is gone. No shot for Goodnight Nick to be able to get in there in time. Emilzy the only one close, but it is secured by the Cozyx fan club. Emilzy gonna have to transform, and here comes Deathwalker. Blink in, descents into madness, but Rapio and Bevy Monster keeping everybody busy on the back line for Goodnight Nick. Rapio tries to jump out, but is met with a stun from Emilzy. Good damage onto the jungler, but Calvin with a massive Intoxicate hits the entirety of Goodnight Nick's backline, but that's it. That's all that's hit the backline, because everyone else has been hitting Deathwalker, and he's still plenty healthy. Goodnight Nick, bend but do not break on the objective fight.
Emilzy tries to find a little bit more on the tail end, but that was a tale of 2 fights. Rapio and Bevy Masa dive deep into the backline, making sure that once Deathwalker transformed, he had no follow-up behind him. They were all trying to finish off these 2 tanky targets, and that's what you were speaking of earlier. Rapio may not have built tanky, but that effective HP from his shield, so hard to deal with.
Jump in, double knockup. Coast wasn't ready for it. He went up and over the top, but Emilzy's got nowhere to go. That's 3 for Rapio, and in fact, all 3 kills for the Cozyx fan club on their jump.
Vaporish Coast drops another taunt on the corpse of his enemy. Emilzy gets to spend 40 seconds seething in the grayscale screen as Cozyx fan club decide to push their lead even further. There was a Pyromancer, just for a moment, if you would believe me, but it's no longer there, and Fire Giant might just join it.
Already down to 60%. Deathwalker's ultimate not quite back up, and Bevy Monster doing his best to zone. The Mire down, and Eyesight's gonna blink in. Here comes the Intoxicate, but the Fire Giant secured by the Cozyx fan club, and the death wails from Goodnight Nick starting to ring through the battlefield. Both the front line drop, and Cozyx fan club now have their choice of the map.
23 minutes in, Fire Giant on 5, and only 5 towers still standing, and I don't think those towers are going to stand for too much longer. Deathwalker dead for 40 seconds. Cozyx fan club might be able to go for a crazy play here. Just run straight down mid, strip away this Phoenix, maybe even potentially the Titan.
9K and climbing in the lead in the gold department. 23 minutes in, and they're already on the mid Phoenix. Calvin blinks in and is met with a hefty amount of CC from Goodnight Nick, and he will fall to Streak Up's damage, but the mid Phoenix is a foregone conclusion. Cozyx fan club have cracked the base of Goodnight Nick. Coast the last one out, as you'd expect. First one in, last out for the Hunter. Not usually his role, but that's the way Coast likes to play.
It is. My man plays on the knife's edge, but it doesn't seem like the knife's edge. He's got a good grip on it. As of now, Calvin trades out his life for the mid Phoenix, and I'd say an admirable cause to go down 4. Cozyx fan club sitting 5-2 in the slash line. Their gold lead, more than you'd want if you're a Goodnight Nick fan.
Yeah.
11,000 in their favor, and 2 tier 2 towers still standing to push that even further. With the mid Phoenix already down, now Goodnight Nick has to contend with the map state as well as continued sieges, because that was a fast power play. Sure, Calvin falls, but you still have 2.5 minutes with this Fire Giant. Considering how quickly these structures have been falling, I think Cozyx fan club could very easily walk away with yet another bird.
Plenty of time for Cozyx fan club, and we often talk about the first Fire Giant setting you up for the second that will then end the game. I don't think you need a whole lot of setup here if you're Cozyx fan club. This is a potential game ender.
I agree completely, but how's the defense look from Goodnight Nick? I'd argue pretty strong. We saw what the engage looks like from Calvin. You leap in, you're stunned by a hammer, you're knocked up by Dragonflight, knocked away. If Deathwalker's around, you're getting knocked up probably 15 more times on the tail end, and the chase down potential of both Streak Up and Ice is incredibly high. So despite this massive lead, I think Cozyx fan club still has to put some respect on the defense of Goodnight Nick.
They're already knocking on the door. Sprint popped, and the Phoenix getting chunked down before anyone has a chance to react. Vaporish Coast putting in the damage, but a good fear from Wolfie's going to delay it. Nice taunts coming from Gunter off the Tycho drums. They're not able to kill Deathwalker, who finally descends into madness, but he's barely got an HP bar to play with. Rapio wishes he had as much as Deathwalker as he falls, but so does Ice. Left Phoenix cracked, and Cozyx fan club now making their way towards the right side. They don't have an opportunity to get this Phoenix as the right side tier 2 still up.
What's the issue for Goodnight Nick? Raid boss Vaporish Coast has gone untouched in the last 3 or 4 team fights. 100% HP, and mana going to be refilling very quickly as well. And that's exactly what we were talking about a little bit earlier. Deathwalker is a non-factor if he gets poked out before his ultimate. And I'd argue 10% HP dropping your ult, probably just not worth. He should have walked back to base.
No wave, but here they come anyways. Right side Phoenix, the last one standing. Coast finally taking some damage as he's forced back, but Bevy Monster just destroying the back line of Goodnight Nick. Right side, Phoenix getting lower as Calvin finds a good Intoxicate right into the back line. In goes Coast, but the axe a little bit wide. Hail of Arrows, dome streak up from max range, and that one is just for fun because Cozyx Fanclub can't end, but Coast gets to brag about another.
So there's been less than 3 Phoenix comebacks in all of competitive history. I'd argue that there's probably about as many 15,000 gold comebacks as well. Cozyx Fanclub in a very good position to close out Game 1, but they found themselves in a similar position up against Elysium. Goodnight Nick, not necessarily completely out of this one just yet. Mid Phoenix going to be respawning very shortly, but these desynced side lane Phoenixes might not come back by the time their Titan falls. And I know that you're not supposed to say it, the Titan's going to fall a little bit later on, but Goodnight Nick, 3-7 right now, nursing a mighty injury as far as their wallet is concerned. I don't see the comeback, man. I'm just going to call it now.
If I'm Streak Up, I'm going, all right, guys, so are we first picking Uller or banning it? Which one do we want to do?
If I'm Streak Up, I'm saying get me set, I guess. Let me play an assassin. This Hunter thing not working out as of right now, but he's about to hit a pretty massive power spike, still sitting on the balance blade that we were discussing what I feel like was about 10 minutes ago. So he has not been allowed to farm. Does at least finish up that Cal, but that kin size, if it is kin size, could find some value. Bevy Moss has been a menace in the backline. He will no longer be allowed to do so once this Hachiman gets that item under his belt. And Mid Phoenix has respawned. Goodnight Nick. They're showing presence around the fire, but look how far pushed up these waves are. I don't think they can.
They didn't really do a great job of pushing out these left waves as they are starting to stack. Mid Phoenix has respawned, and Deathwalker can meet the final fire wave in mid, but Cozyx Fanclub onto the Fire Giant. Rapio zoning in the front line. Good hammer from Emilzy as Fire's getting lower. This is their opportunity, but Cozyx Fanclub has already got it by the scruff of the neck. Fire Giant goes their way. Blink in from Deathwalker as Ice Ice and Emilzy are in alongside. Mystic Rush doesn't find a home, and Vaporish Coast gonna find 3, make that 4, but he will fall. 2 Streak Up. Goodnight Nick finally able to take down the Hunter and the Mage. Gunter's gone as well, but Wolfie is toast. It's a double kill for Rapio, and Bevy Monster gonna sign his name on Deathwalker's corpse as Game 1's going Cozyx Fanclub's way.
Cozyx Fanclub from beginning to end, complete dominance in Game 1, just as we saw in their set up against Elysium, and I don't even think they need to dirty their hands any further. This Titan could just fall to the minions, but it would be unbeknownst for Cozyx Fanclub to leave any drop of blood untouched by them. Instead, okay, I mean, yeah, take the Phoenix. You earned it, I suppose.
Hey, Goodnight Nick can press F6 anytime they want.
Fair enough.
That's on them. If they want to watch, they can decide to, I suppose. Game 1 goes Cozyx Fanclub's way, and from the minute the action started in earnest, it wasn't close. Took 12 minutes before we started to see any real fighting.
Was it that early?
It was 12 minutes, that's right. Well, you're saying it was a long 12 minutes?
No, I love it.
Great. Mifflin and I had a great cast to start the day, I suppose. Look, Cozyx Fanclub, this is what they did to Elysium Game 1. It was Games 2 and 3 that were a problem for them, so we'll see if they've learned from their mistakes, if they can adjust on the fly. We'll go to a quick break and get ready for game number 2.
Love should be easy, why should it not? When all you want is to be loved, it's
That's right, panels, meet and greets, plenty of content, cosplay contests. Oh, yeah, and the SMITE World Championship. That's happening, too. January 6th through 9th, 2022 is the hi-rez showcase. There is so much in store. I'm so excited for this year's. And then, of course, all of it capped off by the SMITE World Championship, as well as everything else that I just listed there. You do not want to miss it. January 6th through 9 is the hi-rez showcase coming up in just a few months' time. That is wild. This year has absolutely flown by. Just like Game 1 feels like it flew by for the Cozyx Fanclub. Trelly, this is exactly what we saw Cozyx Fanclub do to Elysium yesterday in Game 1. And so we got to hold our breath a little bit going into Game 2 and potentially 3. We'll see if Cozyx Fanclub iron out their Game 2 mistakes. But this is just so wild. Again, this is the SOC team that beat an SEC team, and they're taking it to the top teams in the EU SEC. This one felt close for about 12 minutes while we were farming up and building our case, and then Cozyx Fanclub just ran away with it.
Yeah, it seemed like there was some absolute lane dominance from Coast, right? I mean, you see that he's diving you under tower, he's making sure that you have no sort of way to get out and get your farm, and then it just kind of seemed like he was left a free cast.
It did, didn't it? And brought to that point by his jungler, Rapio, on this Nike, who we wondered. No, we didn't so much wonder because we've seen Nike jungle work out so far this weekend, but the power curve is always interesting to follow along with. The first couple of kills in this game affected by Rapio. The build felt good on this Nike pick. You know, it's something you have to look out for because so often we talk about Cthulhu and Nike in the pick ban phase. Nike can also work out in the jungle as well, as we've seen here. And someone's got to do something about Coast, man. Look, if he's going to be able to play like this, from range, yes please. Domed him, as Aggro said. I agree with that one. But Coast is just such an X factor for this team, and he is so much fun to watch.
Oh yeah. I mean, I remember Myth said like in the middle of the cast, he's like, Vaporish is still full HP after a full team fight. I mean, he's pumping out this much damage, and it just seemed like you could have thrown a few of those Cthulhu autos his way and then Descent to Madness, you know? It just seemed like they could not shut him down. Right. Obviously, he dies here, but it doesn't matter at that point because they can just push in. They've got a Phoenix down. So it just seemed like he was left a free cast, and obviously Rapio put on a show. Of course, the Nike was popping off big damage as well.
Yeah, the one time Coast died was in that fight. One time anyone on Cozyx Fanclub died throughout the entirety of that game. An uncharacteristic game from Deathwalker, kept largely in check on that Cthulhu. I think we have to mention Ice. Lowest player damage in the game. The Robin was largely ineffective here for this Goodnight Nick team. Almost a polar opposite from what we saw Rapio do there on the Nike. I think the jungle was a bit of a difference in game number 1. I don't think, though, Trelly, that condemns this Robin pick. I think it still has its value, bit of an off performance in game 1.
Definitely. I mean, I think at one point the cast mentioned that he had a perfect gank, blinked in, and then just kind of whiffed. The Mystic Rush, you gotta hit those ults. Right. If he hits those ults, that's a completely different dive, and that could have started a snowball. That would have been the first kill of the game. You get first blood, and it just didn't land. So if he was, I think if he maybe hits those abilities, he probably could have started off to a much better start. Sure.
Small moments that end up making a big difference down the stretch. Can the Cozyx Fanclub in game 2 or 3, they've got 2 games to get it done here, knock Goodnight Nick out of the tournament? Picks and bans for game number 2 will tell us a bit of that story. We flip-flopped here. Cozyx Fanclub in that first pick slot, and that'll leave Goodnight Nick over in that second pick slot. So we saw some interesting changes in priority maybe in the first couple of bans, and that was the Izanami and the Heimdall taken away. Goodnight Nick didn't want Coast to have the Heimdall, and we don't want to give Izanami over to Goodnight Nick either if we're the Cozyx Fanclub. Still a chance to ban out that Heimdall, but I'm looking at Coast in the way that he played on Uller. I don't want him to have that pick either. I also don't want him to have Heimdall, maybe. You're kind of picking your poison, maybe. Do we give him Heimdall? Do we give him Uller? Do we leave one of the 2 open for ourselves? It's a tough spot to be in when a player is playing as well as Coast is.
It is a tough spot, and worst of all, you don't have first pick here if you're Goodnight Nick. So you have to decide: is the Cthulhu, is the Uller, what's the Heimdall that we've banned away each time? Which one of these are we going to value the most? And they only have 1 ban left because they chose the Iza and the Odin. So they're going to have to decide right now what they think is the most thing that's going to do them in here, because they go home if they lose this one.
Yeah, it's a fantastic point. So Uller ends up being the answer. And so Cozyx Fanclub, I just think after what Coast did, it's hard to ban out the Nike if you want to leave that open for yourself. The Cthulhu is there as well. I mean, it's a difficult spot being in the second pick. But if you're able to leave 3 of the power picks open, and 4 if we're considering the Tiamat here,
that is true.
then you get a quick 1-2 punch as a reply. And so Tiamat, maybe the strongest god left available here. No surprise by any or by any stretch of the imagination that Tiamat ends up getting picked here. But you're in an interesting spot, and Fenrir admittedly surprises me, Trelly.
I agree as well.
I think along a similar vein as the Robin, I don't know if you can condemn the Cthulhu pick just because Deathwalker had an off game on it in game 1. But it looks like if Goodnight Nick are going to lock this in, it's going to be none of what we speculated. It's going to be Fenrir or Geb as your first 2 picks.
Well, this is our last shot, right? If they mess this up, they're done. Throw away the game plan that you got so far. You pick Fenrir. What is Fenrir's biggest counter to date? You just, Geb Shield, get you out of the mouth. Right. Makes sense to me. So they're like, you know what? If we want this Fenrir, you can't miss Brutalize, right? You can't, if you're missing Mystic Rush, you can't miss Brutalize. So I like where we're at. Okay, you can, but it's
I'm thinking here. I've probably missed Brutalize a couple times.
Either way,
there's no way you can miss Brutalize, right?
Okay, there's a small possibility, but hold that thought because Coast gets his Heimdall. This is something that has been banned away from him time and time again. So we're about to see. I mean, what's so scary about it? We're about to find out.
Yeah, this is now a slightly more concerning lane. Although Bacchus and Uller, I think as far as just on paper, I'm nervous about that. But when you add Vaporish Coast to the Heimdall list, you attach the 2 together, I think that carries some extra weight with it. Raijin ends up being the pick here for Goodnight Nick, and so. Brutalize difficult to miss, and that's my point, is I miss it because I'm bad at Fenrir. But if this ends up being in the jungle, a chance for a better performance here from Ice Ice. But Fenrir or Geb Raijin, nothing to scoff at there. On the other side, though, you look at Cozyx Fanclub. They've got both of their carries maybe near the top of the tier list. Does the Fenrir Geb, in your eyes, and we'll see what the jungle looks like later on for Goodnight Nick, maybe Fenrir specifically, pose a threat to this Heimdall and Tiamat, or do you think that the backline already for Cozyx Fanclub's feeling okay?
Yeah, I would say the Heimdall doesn't care too much about the Fenrir. You have a lot of outplay potential with your Bifrost, but the Bacchus, I think, would be quite the issue, right? Because you have to get beads. If not, you have no sort of CC immunity. If you ever want to flop in, you're going to be the target of that Ragnarok, so you're going to be dragged under tower. It kind of forces you into this beads or a different play style than you want to play on this Bacchus.
Yeah, it's a great point. That's something we'll have to look out for. As the early to mid-game rolls on, level 12 is going to be an interesting point as well with the relic choices there. So Soul Lane still in the eyes of Goodnight Nick here as far as need to ban checklist up against the Cozyx Fanclub. I mean, it's King Arthur and Nike will be taking a ban here on the other side. Now, we have seen some Chiron this weekend. And by some, I mean 1 game of Chiron this weekend. Did not look great. Do you have a continued level of confidence in this pick that it can perform in the current meta?
I mean, the only thing I see here is if Streak Up's cleanses are sick and he's able to cleanse these ults, maybe that could, put a dent in Vaporish's plans. That's the one thing I could really see, but it's a difficult ability to land, especially on yourself.
Yeah, that is there's a lot of ifs attached to it. I do want to say, and I want to give some love to Calvin because we obviously talked about Rapio and Vaporish Coast in the post-game highlight reel. The intoxicates from Calvin in game 1 were gross. Felt like at least once or twice got 4 or 5 members of Goodnight Nick locked in there, and so if we're keeping that going, we might as well move on to post-game from game 2, crowning Cozyx Fanclub as the winners of this game, but there is pushback potential for Goodnight Nick.
There's no way.
And we're going back. We are running it back. So with Cthulhu, I'm double checking with Cthulhu still available, with some of those other priority picks in the solo lane still there. We're sticking with the Mulan. We're throwing the game plan out the window, maybe with what hasn't worked this weekend for Goodnight Nick, and we're looking for Mulan to maybe take us home and bring us to game 3.
I just want to know when the chips were down, right? When the going got tough, Deathwalker got Mulan. That's what happened. That's what he feels confident on.
Sure.
Didn't work last time, but hey, this is his last chance. Let's see if he can pull it off.
And it hasn't worked this weekend,
but it has worked.
It has worked in the past. I think that's an important thread to go along with here. Goodnight Nick, backs against the wall, 1 game away from elimination. Can the Cozyx Fanclub do it to him? Let's find out.
Game 2 about to start, and Goodnight Nick's LAN hopes on the line now as they are facing elimination in Mifflin. They go to the Mulan in this situation.
I can't believe you dropped me like that, man. You want me to go on? I am on record multiple times as an avid, steadfast, stingy, grumpy Mulan hater.
Oh, are you? I didn't know that.
Did you not?
I really didn't know.
Oh, I think that god is just not
Stinky.
very good. Stinky is, yeah, that's a good adjective for it. And you know what? And here's the thing.
Uh-huh.
And here's the thing,
Tell me about
Aggro.
it. Yeah, let it go.
I follow Deathwalker on Twitter.
Yeah.
He tweets often after
does.
these games. And every time he plays Mulan, you know what he says?
What does he say?
Man, this god sucks. And then he locks it in again.
Right.
With his tournament on the line.
With his tournament life on the line. He
that's
can't
it.
possibly think it sucks.
He keeps saying it. But he keeps picking it. You're right.
He keeps picking it.
Look, the god's got good lane bully potential. We'll start from the bottom. Good lane bully. Takes a little bit to hit the ground running because you have to level up those abilities, the training exercise.
Which is getting buffed next patch.
Yes.
People are playing on at home right now.
Yeah, but we're not playing that now. We're on
No, you're not.
8.9 bonus balance.
Correct.
So Deathwalker playing a hobbled version of what I can only assume is his favorite character. I just got to think that with Cthulhu out there, with literally every single meta soul laner still available, he could have been better served, but how does it fit into their draft? It's a good frontliner. You're creating a little bit of space for gods like the Raijin. You've got a safety net in Geb. One of the main weaknesses of Mulan being that her ultimate roots you in place, takes a long time to channel. You're not winning a DPS war, kind of like how Anubis or Hades would try to when they root themselves. So that Stone Shield, more often than not, likely going to be headed towards Deathwalker in these longer team fights. But you're putting a lot of weight on the laning phase when you lock in Mulan. You need to be dominating.
Well, they must have felt like they needed pressure in this lane, right? Because Bevy Monster was doing what they can to get those blues, and they were secured every time by Goodnight Nick. I don't think Bevy Monster stole one, but he made them split every single one, sometimes 3-4 waves, forcing ultimates, forcing rotations, and that contributed to Ice being so far behind. So despite Cthulhu being open, I have to think that now they've got to try and play through this solo lane, right? That you've drafted for the laning phase.
You have, especially you've built around it as well. Teleport is the relic selection for Deathwalker, and he goes for the mask into axe start. So he's got a lot of damage. He's got very high kill potential right now. So with the help of a jungler, maybe we see some aggression, or just on his own, I suppose. Woo! Okay, yeah, it's a good god.
All right, yeah, this god's got to be good, right? Just half health Rapio with a 3-2, and that'll open up a blue buff invade for Ice, who is right on time using this teleport advantage from Deathwalker. Bevy Monster going to return some damage, but has to be careful because this Mulan is going to be doing quite a lot. Bevy Monster misses the stun. Does he not have the jump? He didn't use it. But Ice gets first blood, and now Rapio caught in a spot where he's trying to box it out, but Deathwalker winning this one as well. Jump in.
What?
Mulan is good, dude. 1-0-1? That's how you start a game.
They just... Cozyx Fanclub just dug in their heels. They said, I'm fighting right here. I know we already lost the blue buff, but I'm going to fight over it anyway. Ice now able to strip away the speed. Bevy Monster on the chase. Does connect the stun. Screech is good, and Vampiric Bat's not as good.
Devour should be in range soon, but Ice has a Brutalize for a bit of movement speed. Bevy Monster must not have his jump leveled. Can we take a look at his skills? Because he clearly never got a chance to use it. Yeah, he doesn't.
Hey, he's got it now.
That would be good information for me to have if I were his jungler and we were fighting to the death at his blue buff. You know, like I'd want to know that. And maybe Rapio did know that.
He's like, you don't have jump, so we stand our ground here, I suppose.
We plant our flag and we will die on this hill, and die they did. And now Deathwalker has the lead. Level 5, significantly ahead of Bevy Monster, just ticking over to level 6. No beads, of course, for Deathwalker, as we already highlighted teleport, so that Stygian Torment could theoretically throw a wrench in his plans, but the ball is now in Deathwalker's Mulan-sized hands.
I'm going to speak as a jungler for a moment here. If I'm in Rapio's shoes, this lane is lost.
Yep.
Soul lane is done.
Good luck.
I have washed my hands of it. Not only do I not care about your blue buff, but I've actually stopped caring about my own speed buff. That's how ahead Deathwalker is right now, and that's the type of style Goodnight Nick needs to continue playing around. And well, it seems like Ice, he's quick on the uptake, already here, and as is Emilzy.
Whole one in force here for Goodnight Nick as they get one set of backs, they get the minis, and I think they're getting blue as well. Yeah, Rapio's heading over to the left-hand side, as is Wolfie. He'll be able to secure his own red. So Goodnight Nick strip the right side jungle from Rapio.
I'd like to, just now, 5 minutes into the game, formally give my apology to Deathwalker and all the Mulan stands in the chat. This god's just good, I suppose. A lot of damage output, good lockdown, good CC setup. The ultimate's got great ability to not only CC immune for yourself, but also to apply some damage and CC to the opposition. I can't think of a single thing that's wrong with her.
Well, when she's level 7 and 2 levels up on her lane opposition, yeah, she's going to look really good.
That's what I'm saying.
And when it comes to gods that are good at pushing leads, you know, every god wants to be ahead. Every god can feel oppressive from ahead. But Mulan takes that lead a little bit better than some other gods. The ability to grapple you back in, the sustain that she'll have from the spear thrust, the damage, it can feel overwhelming in situations like this. And Bevy Monster should get awfully comfortable standing right around where he is right now, right on the tower line.
Deathwalker is also going to start getting some self-sustain from his kit very shortly as he has ticked over towards level 8. This is generally around the time where that second ability does evolve and gains some healing as Wolfie in some trouble.
Right into Rapio's waiting arms, but Rapio's only level 5, and this is not particularly threatening from the Camazotz. Cataclysm only hits Calvin as a jump in from Gunter isn't going to amount to much. Rotation coming from Bevy Monster. He's beating Deathwalker on the rotation, but it's all done and dusted already. And Goodnight Nick expend 2 ultimates, but don't have to worry too much about the damage.
Yeah, Rapio just does not have enough damage output to work through both Wolfie's HP bar and a stone shield at this point. So I'm expecting this game to start to mirror the pace of the last one. It's all on Goodnight Nick to continually push their lead, whereas Cozyx Fanclub, I think we're going to be just waiting for the next 10 or so minutes, trying to find a neutral.
Deathwalker pulled under tower, and he is tanking, but he has the ultimate, and he's out. And with that, Bevy Monster now defenseless on this blue buff invade. Calvin roped on in as another blue buff invade goes successfully, but Goodnight Nick aren't that interested in the kills. They're only interested in the farm on this right-hand side, and once again, they will get all of it.
So if you were wondering how far ahead they are already as Vaporage Coast continuously put pressure on this left-hand side, Rapio hovering nearby should be able to invade the purple buff. Deathwalker tanks up the tower, deals damage to Bevy Monster, leaves afterward. He won that trade, immediately rotates into the jungle, and wins a fight there as well.
Correct.
Yeah, that's Mulan is just good. Just a good god.
We all believe that you believe that too. That's the crazy thing. Level 9 now for Deathwalker, as is Wolfie, who has been under very minimal pressure in this game, only once on that dive from Rapio, but as we covered at the time, pretty far away from being in a position to actually kill the enemy mid laner. Emilzy starting off to a good lead. He's got a level lead and about 2 waves worth of stacks over Emilzy, or over Calvin rather, on these Gauntlet of Thebes. Bacchus, a god that wants to be that oppressive ahead force that we've talked about for Mulan. Doesn't seem to be the case. 4 levels down from Wolfie, which isn't uncommon at this point, but certainly not ideal.
No, and Calvin forced to pick up those beads early on means that he really can't be getting too overly aggressive. Has to concern himself with Ice's ultimate at any given point.
How is Rapio ahead?
Well, he's been farming the entire time,
but not
elsewhere
the right
on
side.
the map. Yeah, not the right side. Ice has only been farming the right side.
He hasn't been getting a camp. I mean, it is worth noting, of course, as Emilzy gets his rollout interrupted. Might have to talk about this action as there's a stun. Rapio picked up, and he doesn't have speeds. Bat Out of Hell will go off barely in the nick of time, but Wolfie has done the damage already. Calvin has fallen. Ice will claim Rapio, and now Gunter in trouble. Streak Up gets him with the long-range shots, but Coast finally, the lone shining light in the darkness for the Cozyx Fanclub, gets their first kill of the game, put onto Emilzy.
Yeah, Coast has been dominating his lane, by the way. He has been set up camp exactly as he was in Game 1 on the Tier 1 tower line, and Streak Up has been suffering for it as Bevy Monster tries to put up yet another defense around his own blue buff, but Deathwalker just wants the fight.
And he's going to win the fight. Not the blue buff, though. Certainly will end up winning the outright trade.
No shot, come on.
He might go for the dive here on the Bevy Monster. No way he's got enough damage, and he doesn't. But again, he just outright wins that trade up against the Cerberus.
He does. He's got good defense. He's already starting to scale as well. Ice has continually hovered on this side of the map, so even if that fight goes a little bit longer, he knows that Fenrir is waiting nearby to help him out. But it's a tale of 2 games right now. It's Deathwalker's game and everybody else. And, well, well, Deathwalker's winning his, but not everybody else is winning on the side of Goodnight Nick. In particular, I still want to keep highlighting Vaporish Coast has been allowed to free farm and is starting to pepper some damage in that Tier 1 tower on the duo side of the map. Calvin seems to have been informed that there's some kill potential over here as he has decided to hover nearby. Streak Up in some trouble, has the ultimate down, but the beads are still available.
Nearly done on stacking his Transcendence, and with that wave, Streak Up will complete the stacking as Ice back again on this right-hand side, knocks down the Tier 1. Bevy Monster forced back all the way to the safety of the Tier 2. And now it becomes who can do the carrying between Deathwalker and Vaporish Coast. The loaded dice on Deathwalker's side is he has got a significantly bigger lead than Coast, but it is worth noting that this teleport strategy doesn't come without its downsides. Heimdall, a god that forces frontliners to buy beads consistently because of how easily he can just eject them from the dive. And I don't know that Deathwalker's going to be able to buy beads. He's got to choose between beads and blink and thorns. I mean, he's got options that he could be going, but I don't know what he's going to end up choosing. He has a level 12, and it is Purification here, so is thinking about that Through the Realms ultimate, but maybe this means it's a little bit harder for him to get in.
A significant sacrifice. Generally, you want both Blink and Thorns on a god like Mulan. Thorns are when you decide to use that ultimate, Blink to put you in a position to actually use that ultimate itself. But Deathwalker, undeterred, has got teleport, should be able to be anywhere on the map at a moment's notice, and beads will allow him, once he does close gap on a Vaporish Coast, to stick there onto him. But it's a bruiser-style build from Deathwalker. This is, again, another double-edged sword. He's not as tanky as he could be with his Glad Shield pickup, but he deals a little bit more damage
Dash
than we're
in from
expecting.
Streak Up. He's looking for Coast, and Coast has the Bifrost down, and he's going to get out of there. He's safe, but Calvin has been left in the wrong part of town. Deathwalker chases him down, but it's Wolfie who claims the kill. Goodnight Nick now 6-1 in the lead, and Wolfie's lead is all of a sudden getting problematic for the side of the Cozyx Fanclub. 2-0-2 on the Raijin.
Why not extend that lead to everybody on Goodnight Nick by picking up a Gold Fury, burning down pretty quickly here. Streak Up, or Vaporish Coast rather, nowhere in range. Gunter, nowhere in range either. Rapio getting accosted by Deathwalker in mid, so the objective will go the way of the Chaos team handily, and this is a much faster pace than we saw in the first one. 12 minutes in was our first kill, I believe, in game one. Well, we're sitting at 7 right now, 6 of which grasped by Goodnight Nick, and is that a 6,000 gold lead already? That's tough.
That's a lot at this point in the game for sure, and we were asking a minute ago how Rapio could ever be ahead of Ice.
He is.
Well, he's not anymore. At that time, it was level 8 for Rapio, level 7 for Ice. In that time, Rapio's gained 2 levels, and Ice has gained 5. He is now level 12 and up 2 levels over the opposition.
And he's already starting to hit some pretty massive power spikes. Transcendence picked up and starting to be stacked up by Ice. Already has a Jotun, so cooldown is the name of the game for this Fenrir. Ragnarok going to be coming through more often than not, whereas Rapio on the other side, just now picking up that Jotuns, has decent damage output, but level 10, no secondary relic, which means no beads available to him. This Camazotz has to play scared. Bat Out of Hell is just an escape tool right now.
And much like Raven, in my opinion, Camazotz, when behind, not particularly fearsome. What is he going to do? Just slow me? That's all he's got at that point. He doesn't really bring a whole lot of threat. I mean, eventually Rapio will get to the point where he will actually threaten Wolfie and Streak Up on these dives, but we are now significantly far from that world where Rapio has to use the Bat Out of Hell after Emilzi's Blink knockup.
Yep, that's Rapio's game until he ticks over to 12, and maybe even a little while afterward as Calvin is forced to use the beads as well, but Ice is there.
And these beads are already down. Calvin picked up, put in the tower, and Deathwalker gonna snag that one for himself. An easy kill off of Emilzi's initiation.
Man, this is twice now where Cozyx Fanclub dominates a game 1 situation. Game 2 goes the exact opposite way as Emilzi. I mean, he's just playing with abandon. He doesn't care right now. And who's threatening him? Not Coast. That guy's dead.
That guy's dead, and Wolfie gonna come on over and help out Streak Up a little bit, notch his 3rd kill on the board, and make it easy now for that left side to be pushed up. Mid-tier 1 going to fall to the 3-man pressure of Emilzi, Ice, and Deathwalker. As Goodnight Nick doing as you should with a lead this exorbitant. Whatever you want. You have options, and Good Night Nick are exercising.
I was taken aback there. That's an A+ word you just tossed at me. You've been reading in the green room.
I have been.
Did you just read that word?
No, I didn't.
Oh, you just had that one.
I had that one locked in. I don't know. Is the word exorbitant in the first, like, 50 pages of Dune? Because that's what I just started.
I couldn't tell you.
That couldn't tell
a rhetorical question, I'm sure.
Yes.
Hey, anyway,
Oh,
Rapio.
nice big word there, Mifflin.
Rhetorical.
Yeah.
Thanks.
It has an H near the beginning. That's how you know it's fancy.
That it's smooth, like there
Yeah.
and there.
Okay, well, not that one. No.
Okay,
or
where?
That one. No. It's like longer. you
Chair?
know? No.
Share.
Yes, that's one. That's a fancy
The
one.
artist.
For sure. Yep. That's who I was thinking of, too. Rest in peace, Sonny.
Cozyx Fan Club playing from very far behind at this point. Let me do some quick math. That's 7,000 gold. Just about. 9,000 experience, maybe a little bit more impactful. Good Night Nick. Can do just about no wrong in my mind. Normally, you don't think about Fire Giants until about that 18, 20-minute mark, but I think Good Night Nick has expedited shipping on Fire Giant. They can go ahead and head over at any point, and if not, take the actual objective, force the engagement, in my mind, because Cozyx Fan Club, they don't really have the right to step up to this massive lead that the Chaos team has accrued for themselves. And taking a peek at the wards, they're losing the vision advantage as well. Just look at their pockets. Good Night Nick, loaded up.
They got plenty of it. They got Fire Giant Prime is what you're telling me. 2 days. There immediately. Rapio picked up, or trying to get the Deathwalker, who was picked up by Bevy Monster, who is very much...
He beats?
Yeah, he beats.
Why?
I don't know. But he did, at the very least. Calvin going to be slowed down. Tycho jumps there as well. Pridwin Shield nowhere near enough. Ice with another easy kill, but that one does cost Good Night Nick 2 ultimates to do so. And Good Night Nick are heading back towards that Pyromancer. Maybe not a Fire Giant pull quite yet with Streak up on the left side of the map, but Ice bringing some pretty good objective damage on the Fenrir at this point in the build. Has Crusher, has Jotuns nearly finished with the trance.
Let's play some word magic here. I want to make Calvin's death sound worth it. He forced 3 ultimates, beads from Deathwalker,
Yeah.
and Blink
Yep.
from Ice. Calvin finds some huge value
Yep.
on that Bacchus positioning, but it does not amount to much. Good Night Nick are able to take away the support and the Pyromancer off the map. Complete ward dominance on the right-hand side, and Rapio playing a little bit further forward than I think he would like to be as of now. Does have both relics available and the ultimate, so not under a whole lot of threat of death, but maybe threat of losing out another objective, as Good Night Nick have made the rotation 4 strong, or make that 5 standing around the Primal.
And they are up 9 or 8,000 gold at this point. Feels like Cozyx Fan Club have got to draw their line in the sand somewhere, but this might not be the one worth drawing it over. I mean, you do scale pretty well. You've got a Tiamat on your side. You've got Double Guardian. You've got a scaling Coast, who, despite the death, is still pretty close to even with Streak up. It's a matter of when they want to try and get involved. And Good Night Nick treating this Primal Fury with some respect, taking their time on pulling it, and maybe taking a little bit more poke than they need to.
Legitimately, Cozyx Fan Club's composition outscales heavily what
Yeah.
Good Night Nick has. If we get this game to the 35 or so minute mark, because that's how long I'm assuming it's going to take them to get in a position where they can take a tried and true 5-on-5 engagement, I'd argue that the Cozyx Fan Club is heavily favored, especially considering some of the builds we're seeing from Good Night Nick. Deathwalker going for the Void Shield, Glad Shield start, very reminiscent of Season 6, Season 7 style builds. Does not scale well in the late game. He's not necessarily incredibly tanky, and he doesn't deal a whole lot of damage. Right now, he does both of those things. He's incredibly tanky and does damage, but that's a byproduct of the lead and not the build itself. So if Cozyx Fan Club are able to just withstand the efforts of Good Night Nick for double the amount of time we've already been in the game right now, they might be able to find it.
Calvin picked up by Ice. Beads are used, and Intoxicate there. Ice actually uses his beads as well, despite the shield coming from Emilzy. So once again, Calvin getting value out of getting picked up. That's all you need from your support, right?
That's all I'd ever ask from my supports, but they so seldom gave it to me when I played competitively, as Bevy Monster tries to steal away a blue buff.
Jelly catching a stray all of a sudden?
I had more than one support.
Just because you got pentakilled by the Porous Coast.
That's the 18th time this set, man.
Over under 30?
I might become biased. I hope Porous gets eliminated so I don't have to hear it anymore.
Did you hear that, chat? Biased caster? Are you kidding me?
Chat, I'm not
on
biased.
my stream? Unbelievable.
I hope Vaporish Coast wins. Wait, no.
Biased
I'm not
caster?
biased. I don't care if he wins or loses.
You don't care about the game that's happening?
I can't win.
You sure can't. That's an easy dub for me.
And the chat.
And the chat. Looks like it might be an easy dub for Goodnight Nick if they can keep this ball rolling. Though the gold lead stagnated at 9,000, which is a fine place for it to be. As Rapio ends up losing half his HP to like one tick of Raiju and Percussive Storm.
Man, that gold lead is so stagnant right now. Like, what are they doing? Good night.
Do you think the problem is that Bevimonster's breath isn't ghastly enough?
No, I think the Torment is just not nearly Stygian enough.
Yeah, I was thinking that too. I saw it the first time. I was like, is there any Stygian? I was expecting Stygian.
I explicitly ordered extra Stygian with my Torment, and there is none.
Unbelievable. Tier 2 tower siege begins now for Goodnight Nick. And Streak Up and Emilzy can just two-man this one down, though it is a fairly big rotation. And here comes Ice Ice, Wolfie, and Deathwalker. Tier 2 down, and here comes Ice Ice over the wall. Calvin, no beads for 50.
He's dead.
And he is just toast. Didn't get the memo on the lack of defense on that Tier 2. And Goodnight Nick looking to keep the siege going, or maybe head back towards fire, and they'll choose the latter, though maybe they can pick up a stray Tier 2 here in mid on the way.
Yeah, not too many people in range to put up a defense. Just Gunter right now, and Gunter does not have the right to step into the realm of kings, that being his own Tier 2 tower right now, or wherever Goodnight Nick deem worthy of their own steps. And now it's the speed buff. That belongs to them as well. Streak Up gonna pick this one up. Go to the Fire Giant, boys. I don't think there's much standing between you and it. If Cozyx Fan Club step up for the 5-on-5 right now, there's not many win conditions for them. Triple blink composition means that Cozyx Fan Club, if they are able to close gap onto Streak Up, he'll use Centaurus to death him unit, so you're probably not looking for him. Maybe
Yeah.
Ice Ice could be a decent target to try and shut down immediately, but that's an incredibly mobile Fenrir that also has Magi's Blessing. It'll be pretty hard to work through all that. So let's look elsewhere. Wolfie, at level 20, has been able to upgrade his starter item, and he's tanky.
Uh-oh, Coast and Rapio know they're in trouble, and Coast Bifrost is not in a great position. Beads used, and he'll actually get to a better one. Okay, so that's the one he placed first. Rapio has to use his ultimate as well, as Tycho Drums will not be in range. So beads and ults expended, and Vaporish Coast has got to be the lone light in the darkness here for Cozyx Fan Club. The only one at level 20, close in his build path to what Streak Up has, whereas you can't say that for anyone else on Cozyx Fan Club side. And he just lost his beads, and there's a Fenrir on the other side. And that's usually a recipe for success for the Fenrir side.
Well, he's still got some CC immunity in the ultimate. Pretty hard to utilize up against Ragnarok, but it exists. I have to bring it up contractually. Said so when I got hired. So Vaporish Coast does have CC immunity available to him going forward. But Goodnight Nick have infinite resources. They're like Batman. They're just rich. That's their superpower. They're just rich.
Cozyx Fan Club deciding if they're gonna, which version of the Joker they're gonna be, I suppose.
I hope it's Joaquin Phoenix.
Do we?
Yeah. I mean, that guy wasn't super effective. He only, spoilers for Joker, only like took out like 3 dudes in that movie, and there's 5 on Goodnight Nick.
Yeah, we're rooting for the Joker, I suppose, is the argument. Baby Monster ends up getting taunted back in by Wolfie, and he's going to be A-OK. And look at this, Coast and Rapio never left the left-hand side. They got their beats forced, their ultimate forced, and they just backed up until it looked like they were gone, and then continued to push. So Tier 2 tower has fallen. Now as Coast has to start to back, as does Rapio. Deathwalker has gone to answer as he has the upgraded teleport. Never has Rapio been more thankful for geometry than that rock right there that stopped that grapple.
It's actually
from
geology.
Hitting. Okay, fair enough. Well, it's geometry in the shape of the rock.
Yeah, but it's geology because it is a rock. Anyway, right side Phoenix does fall down. Goodnight Nick with very little opposition.
It's called map geometry,
able to strip
okay?
it away.
That's the technical term, and I'm not going to be confused by it anymore. Coast
Phoenix
underneath the mid Phoenix. This is my job, Mifflin. Pulled in on the Baby Monster, and he's going to have to jump away. Goodnight Nick have just been toying with Cozyx Fan Club, and that's made me and Mifflin devolve because they have just absolutely dominated in this game number 2. Mealsy going to get stunned, poked down to half. Calvin quickly poked down to half as well as Ice Ice was hunting Vaporish, whose beads are down for 10, but didn't quite find him with that Unchained. And it looks like, against all odds, Cozyx Fan Club have backed Goodnight Nick off of their Phoenix, at least for the time being.
Are you willing to say that? Do you think Cozyx Fan Club backed them off, or do you think Goodnight Nick just decided to leave? Because I think I'm leaning towards the latter there. Odin
Yeah,
Fury
probably.
going to the Chaos team, so that gold lead that has been exorbitant, as you said earlier, continues to be so. No longer stagnant, as it has doubled itself up to about 15,000. Parity with the experience charts, but experience means a little bit less at this point, as it is really only Calvin that needs it, sitting level 15, 4 levels down on a Mulesy. Good night, Nick, with Fire Giant for a good deal of time going forward. Should be able to strip away at least one more bird or make an attempt to do so. The defense of Cozyx Fanclub is not awful. They've got a steadfast front line, or they would if they weren't so far behind. Bevy Monster and Calvin, very tanky at this point, could be able to burn away some of these defensive relics of Goodnight Nick and open the door for, as you said, the lone light in the darkness, the lighthouse on the lake, the shining star amongst the cosmos. Penta Kid, Vaporous
The guy
Ghost.
who Penta killed you.
Yeah, I got Penta'd by him. He might be able to do something here. He's got good damage output, and the last defense was acting as a front line, but
Gunter
there's no defense.
jumped on by Ice Ice, but Rapio was waiting in the wings. Ragnarok is there, but all the meanwhile, Goodnight Nick is on this left side Phoenix. Rapio uses the beads, and Ice Ice puts him down in the 1v1. Get off me, says Ice Ice. Easy win for him in the 2v1. Gunter has returned to try and defend on this left side Phoenix Siege, but he's been grappled by Deathwalker, pulled back in. That's forces purification beads, and Calvin now jumps on by Wolfie, who has been able to go wherever and whenever with that Thunder Crash. Left side Phoenix down, and Coast might be soon to follow. Wolfie looking for the last shot, and he won't get it. Gunter jumps in, and that'll force the Aegis from Wolfie. But Goodnight Nick now just crossing their T's and dotting their I's. Mid-Phoenix, the only thing left standing between them and a deciding Game 3.
Rapio done for 20, as is Calvin. Goodnight Nick, 5 strong with Fire Giant on 5 as well. Should be able to work their way in.
Coast puts some autos in alongside Gunter. Good damage coming from this Raijin as Coast forced back, as is Bevy Monster, right into the waiting jaws of Ice Ice, and we're going to a Game 3. Goodnight Nick says it's not bedtime quite yet.
That's pretty good. Nah, but did you like set that one up, or did you come ready with
My
that?
whole life has been setting up for that moment, Mifflin.
That's pretty sick. Anyway,
Right
2
here
games.
in the losers bracket of the Phase 2 circuit playoffs. My whole life trajectory right here.
2 games in this set so far, neither one of them particularly close. Both been pretty dominant performances, so we gotta believe that Game 3 should be the largest adaptations we've seen from either one of these squads going forward. I don't know. It's hard to say. Maybe more Mulan.
Maybe more Mulan. God's good, as we've agreed the whole time. No doubt
Everybody
about
thought
it.
so.
Let's see what happens in Game 3. We'll be right back. Don't go anywhere.
drama has started early on in the day here on Friday. We go to a Game 3. One more game to decide who goes home and who moves on in the lower bracket here in the EU-SCC. Good night, Nick. They bounce back. They take it to Cozyx Fanclub from minute 1 here in game number 2. And remember, this is what happened yesterday to Cozyx Fanclub. They beat Elysium in game 1 and then get steamrolled in game 2 and 3. So a decider game 3 is over the horizon. Trelly Relly's still with me. And Trelly, look, we had some question marks around how some of these picks would look for Goodnight Nick. The Milan, we wondered. The Fenrir, we wondered. And both of them look good.
Yeah, it seemed like the Fenrir was exactly what they needed to shut down Calvin on this Bacchus. He seemed pretty dominant in the first game. Now, just pick him up. Can't really do much there, right? If you're in his Fenrir's mouth,
right.
You're going to shut that Bacchus pick down real quick.
Whiplash for Ice Ice. Look, game 1, Ice Ice was ineffective. Let's not mince words here. He did not look good in game 1. Ice Ice looked great in game number 2. Hey, there's your Bacchus.
We saw a whole lot of that.
Yeah, we saw that. Plenty for Ice Ice in game number 2. And the ability to lock down these picks was just ever so important for Goodnight Nick. And I think, Trelly, that also opened up the door for Wolfie and Streak Up to have some space to operate. Later on in the game, the 1v1 from Ice Ice certainly looked good. What's our official prognosis? What's our decision here on Deathwalker's Mulan after game 2?
Well, it seemed like this was the confidence boost he needed. He looked great on the pick. He had that mask start into the Sundering Axe where he had way too much damage, and they really thought they could just steamroll him. It just did not work out for them.
I'm thinking early on back to that blue buff kind of skirmish as well. That kind of feels like where this game started to get at. I mean, early on in this game, where Cozyx Fanclub decided they wanted to fight against Deathwalker and Ice Ice at their own blue buff. They already lost Bevy Monster, and then Rapio sticks around and dies there as well. A forgettable performance from Rapio and Bevy Monster to be sure, but Calvin as well at 0-6. So you want to talk about whiplash. Ice Ice has some great, or tough game 1, great game 2. Opposite for Calvin, fantastic in game 1. And then a game to forget here in game number 2.
I mean, I would argue the whole reason they drafted, I mean, this Gab Fenrir was constantly just getting the Calvin's beats down. They recognized how effective he was, and that's why they had to shut this down. And he didn't do much, but I think it was because they put so much stock in shutting him down that he couldn't really, be the Bacchus that he was in game 1.
Yeah, and that's so difficult. And that's why, remember, in picks and bans, we had raised our eyebrows a little bit, at least at the Fenrir, the early Fenrir pick. And maybe that's Goodnight Nick sensing that a Bacchus is somewhere in the pipeline here for Calvin later on in the draft. And so now that does, admittedly, I think, Trelly, throw a bit of a wrench in the mix here where Bacchus looked great in game 1 for Calvin. You're riding high if you're the Cozyx Fanclub. You think you found a support that can take you through the series and move you on into the next round. And now suddenly you wonder if Calvin's confidence in the Bacchus is shaken, and you try something different in game 3.
Right. I mean, I see 2 options here because the Bacchus in the Fenrir is not going to work. So
no chance.
You ban the Fenrir, or you find a new support.
Simple enough.
Those are your options because you had beads, but turns out when you have Jotuns and Transcendence, 30% CDR, you can get a few Ragnaroks off before those beads are back up.
Yeah, 6 deaths for Calvin on Bacchus here in game number 2. Picks and bans for game number 3. The decider, the last time one of these 2 teams will play in this tournament here this weekend. And remember, worth mentioning, I didn't mention it earlier on today, if you make it into the grand finals of this tournament, you then have a spot. The top 2 teams in each region, the grand finals teams of these events, EU and NA, all 4 of those teams will have a spot in the SMITE World Championship play-in bracket. And so a lot on the line, not only this weekend, prize money, bragging rights, things like that, but looking forward to the end of the year, a lot of that on the line as well. Let's catch back up with picks and bans. Izanami taken away by the Cozyx Fanclub. The Morrigan ends up getting banned out by Goodnight Nick here, no surprise. King Arthur, though, that's a bit of a pivot. I guess it's looked good enough in the last couple of games that we don't want to deal with Arthur. Surprising, maybe, Trelly, that King Arthur now taking a ban over Cthulhu and Nike, a couple of the stalwart picks here this weekend.
Yeah, I mean, if Goodnight Nick is going to go back to this Mulan, maybe that's the plan. Or maybe they have
right.
some sort of backup plan here. I mean, they're probably just trying to feel out the picks and bans here. Whereas the Cozyx Fanclub, they seem to be going with just traditional Tiamat Izanami.
Yeah, traditional through and through here for the Cozyx Fanclub. And then that does raise the question, or the kind of couple of options that we had for Calvin. If you want to stick with the Bacchus, you have to consider, or you might just have to, not even consider, you might have to do it, ban out that Fenrir. Though Calvin has proven, I think, enough to us at this point that supports outside of the Bacchus have Wicked for himself there. Odin ends up filling that final ban slot for the Cozyx fan club, as well as the Uller for Goodnight Nick. And so Heimdall is still around. Didn't look fantastic for Vaporish Coast, but there was just too much pressure against him there in that game. Kind of felt like the last line of defense was at Heimdall. But Fenrir first pick yet again for Goodnight Nick. That almost limits the viability of a Bacchus later on in this draft.
I mean, I would argue Goodnight Nick just made a huge mistake. The Geb is still open. This is a big counter to that Fenrir, and last time they picked it with the Fenrir, right? Fenrir,
Right.
Geb. Get those counters out of the way. Right now, it's still open. Heimdall Geb would be, I would argue, the best possible choice for Cozyx fan club right now.
That would make a lot of sense. The Geb shield would feel just fine into the Fenrir. You would assume it is at least a Geb hover, and it will be a Geb lock-in. So you show your cards a bit early here. First picking that Fenrir, you give the viability or the option of this Geb right back over to the Cozyx fan club. So Heimdall plus Geb, so you get something super comfortable for Vaporish Coast, and then something that feels good into the Fenrir in the Geb there for Calvin. And we're sticking with the Chiron here for Goodnight Nick and the Raijin. The Raijin looked great. The Chiron had some good moments there in that game. You surprised that Goodnight Nick don't change up their backline at all?
I mean, it seems that Goodnight Nick is riding that high, right? They just had a fantastic game, and they just played everything well. But a lot of what they did was off of picking Calvin, this no CC immune Guardian. Now they have Geb, who can cleanse others, cleanse himself. There's a lot of options he has here.
Right.
I think this is not going to go the same way if these picks are played effectively.
Right, at least a few of the kills that land on Calvin, whatever, you run that back with a Geb, and things are looking a little bit different throughout that game. Nike ends up being the pick here for the Cozyx fan club. Worth mentioning, we see Nike in jungle and solo lane, so there is some flexibility potential within that pick there as well. I think the next round of bans will probably open our eyes to where Goodnight Nick think that is going to land. How about this? The Deathwalker Mulan draws itself a little bit of respect from the Cozyx fan club. Cthulhu still available. You know, Cthulhu got totally looked over in game number 2. Mulan for Deathwalker is just drawing that much attention here, and then the Terra band down the stretch, followed up by Aphrodite and Soul. So pretty interesting. You know what? I suppose you don't want to go up against an Aphrodite Nike. We've seen that combo plenty.
Yeah, I mean, it also is not great for the Fenrir. You know, you can kiss them in the mouth, and there's just a lot of options that you don't want to deal with. But, I mean, Cozyx did defeat the Deathwalker Cthulhu, and they made it look easy. So maybe they just, he was top damage in that game, but maybe they just thought, you know what? Deathwalker's he's a one-trick pony. He's got a Mulan. That's his only bag of tricks. Let's ban it. Look, I don't agree, but that's the thought process.
Yeah, if Cozyx fan club are thinking Deathwalker's a one-trick pony, got some issues on their side. Cerberus, and I do think it's worth mentioning, Cerberus was the pick that Deathwalker went to after a bad Mulan game, and then kind of rerouted in the Cerberus and looked a lot better for Deathwalker in the following game. So I think Cerberus a fine pick here for Deathwalker, followed by a Ganesh Hover and lock-in for Goodnight Nick. So now you get a look at all 5 for Goodnight Nick. An elimination match here in Game 3. Fenrir, Chiron, Raijin, Cerberus, Ganesh. Do you think that that's a composition of 5 that can work well together?
I could see it, yeah. I mean, Ganesh here opens up a lot of options, especially for trying to shut down this Geb, right? Because if the Ragnarok comes through, you want to try to Cataclysm to immune it, but you can silence him before then, and then he's going to be stuck in his mouth. You force Geb into beads? You really want that blink initiation. But now I'm staring at this Thanatos pick.
I think you have to.
I mean, this raises a lot of eyebrows here because, I mean, this is hit or miss. It's always said this Thanatos pick is usually, it gets that steamboat rolling, and if you don't, it's rough to pull off.
In your mind, are you're coin flipping, you're rolling the dice, you think that the Cozyx fan club draft kind of lives and dies with how this Thanatos does?
I would say so. I mean, if Rapio's sick with it, I think this is an easy game for them, and if not, it's going to be a tough one.
Goodnight Nick versus Cozyx fan club. Winner take all, game number 3. Next round on the line. Let's see who wins.
Game 3, our very first elimination game of the SMITE circuit playoffs. And boy, is it going to be a fun one. A lot of interesting lock-ins here, Mifflin. I'm looking at the Rapio Thanatos that Trelly was just talking about, and this Ganesh pick for Emilzy.
Well, I think Ganesh is something that you could probably go into more depth on because you have the stronger opinions on it. So I'll tackle the Thanatos. Rapio, back in the console days, had 3 picks. 4 if you're being generous.
Okay.
And I will be.
Okay, thank you.
He's got Thor. He's got Thanatos. He's got Ratatasker. And then I'd toss Robin on there.
Okay.
He likes the global ultimates. He likes being able to get involved very early on. So the second we see Rapio tick over to level 5, I'm expecting him to get involved in the duo lane, the solo lane, wherever he can to make his stamp known on this one and just utilize that early pressure that Trelly was talking about. But it is a double-edged sword in that Thanatos scales pretty well for a long time. But in the very latest portions of the game, if he decides to go a full damage build, he's not winning a fight up against Ice, not with Seething Howl on the table. That lifesteal and additional power is really going to start swinging the fights in Fenrir's favor. And if Ice so chooses, he would be given the opportunity to just go for like a semi-tank build. Maybe toss a little bit of defense on the end there and just utilize the additional power from your kit to push you over the edge. So I think Rapio has put himself on a timer, and not timers like we're used to seeing. Not, if we get to this portion of the game, we win. It's, if we get to this portion of the game, we're probably losing.
Has to try and get the ball rolling early, and that was the case on the other foot for Goodnight Nick in game number 2, and it was really centered around this Fenrir. So I understand why they first picked it. Ice, a non-factor in game 1, a driving force in game 2, but you leave open something like Nike, Geb, Heimdall. It was Heimdall, Geb, I believe, the 2 top picks for Cozyx Fanclub in this game. How do you feel about Goodnight Nick prioritizing the Fenrir over the dominant Guardian in Geb?
I don't love it. I think Geb's probably one of the strongest picks you can ask for right now, especially considering when you've got a shining light in the darkness, a scintillating force like Vaporish Coast. You just want to facilitate that guy. Geb's going to do that incredibly well with these stone shields in the late game as well as throughout the laning phase the second he gets over to level 5. Cataclysm is a very high kill pressure tool, and with Blink as his first relic pickup, should be able to find those relatively easily. Fenrir is strong, but Ice has a storied career. He's been very successful on a plethora of picks. I don't think he is reliant on the Fenrir by any means.
They still wanted to give it to him in this game, and he's being aggressive early. Look at where he is on the map right now, all the way in the enemy jungle. And this could complement the pressure that Goodnight Nick have pretty nicely. As Gunter trying to defend his red, does so successfully, and Ice now walking directly towards Calvin, though he's a level 3 Geb, and there's very little that scares me less than a level 3 Geb. But here comes Rapio, and this one is where it starts to get a little spooky. Has the blink, but seems more interested in securing the buff than going for the kills.
That's curious. I would have expected maybe a target onto a Mulesy there. The blink scythe would have slowed him down, and Mulesy really only has the dash for an escape right now, which means that the slow would have lingered and likely would have, with Sense of Death, Rapio would have been able to chase that one out. But Vaporish Coast was not in position to follow up, so maybe Rapio worried about the 2v3 scenario, instead decides to just make sure the buffs do go their way. And it seems like we are going to be going for a much more standard pace of game here for the European SEC. Neither squad really putting too much emphasis in the solo lane. Last time around, it was Ice hovering the right-hand side of the map the entirety of the match. This time, it's more of a junglers on tour style, meaning that every single lane has to play slightly more concerned, but Rapio, having just now ticked over to level 5, getting access to that global ultimate is a threat.
He has not reset quite yet, whereas Ice has. Ice sitting on that heavy mace, and even getting that little bit of extra power and flat pen can make the difference when it comes to some of these fights. So Rapio may be waiting to just finish off the Jotuns at this point. He's sitting at 1,500 golden hands, so yeah, he should be able to just back and buy that Jotuns after another wave with his pots to sell as well. Certainly has enough in order to do that. And then the map becomes unlocked for Rapio on the Thanatos. If you were in his shoes, Mifflin, where are you visiting first?
I'm headed to the duo lane. I want to make sure that Vaporish Coast is comfortable. Streak up on Chiron is a pretty easy target, but maybe not right now as Calvin's caught out.
Emilzy locks him in the cage, but Calvin pretty happy to be there as Coast tossing autos, but look at the path coming from Ice. He's coming around the back. Streak up has used the giddy up, and that little bit of vision, I think, did actually end up catching Ice. And Vaporish Coast and Calvin fend off the 2v3, or the 2-on-2, with Emilzy's ultimate now on cooldown.
Rapio just now making his way back to base, so we'll be able to finish off that Jotuns or anything else that he elects to. It is Jotun's Wrath this time around, so some CDR, some penetration, good power available to the Thanatos, but it has taken him a little while to get there, so instead of headed straight for the duo lane, instead has to clear out his buffs on the other side of the map, whereas Ice hovering nearby, taking away some of your ADC's farm, stripping away that purple buff experience. Seems like that was just a split between him and Emilzy, so Streak Up going to suffer a little bit from that trade. One of the cardinal sins of junglers, or so I've been told from all of my ADCs that I've ever teamed with in the past.
Yeah, and how much did that ever bother you in the past?
Not even a little bit.
Right. Yeah, you were still doing the exact same thing, I'm sure. Deathwalker just uses Stygian Torment, but Bevy Monster unpressed and doesn't use anything in response. Rapio getting a little low after the blink in from Deathwalker. Cozyx Fanclub did manage to secure the Greater Scorpion, but Rapio now without that hovering death. Jotun's Wrath means it'll be up sooner rather than later, so not the end of the world for him, as Ice has now completed his Jotun's Wrath, both junglers on their typical first item power spikes.
This is one of the strongest phases of the game for Thanatos. Every time he's forced to use that hovering death, defensively is a lost opportunity, especially considering he's got a slight level lead already. Rapio likely wants to get involved as soon as possible. So good night, Nick, just by forcing that cooldown, I would argue, do a good job of slowing down this match. In a team composition like good night, Nick have, with superior scaling in my mind to what Cozyx Fanclub has, every single bit of time, every ounce, every grain of sand that falls through the sand clock, what are those called?
An hourglass.
The sand clock is good for them.
Gunter getting 1v1 potentially in mid. Wolfie finds the solo kill. How about that for a way to start the elimination game here for Goodnight Nick? Wolfie does it all on his own for first blood.
Huge. Absolutely massive. And he trades out his ultimate as well. So Gunter loses out on that tool. Won't be able to get involved in mid. Will Rapio until that Discordia ultimate becomes available yet again. So Wolfie the victor this time around. But both defensive relics remain standing. Beads for both Gunter and Wolfie still available. So junglers got to work pretty hard if they want to leverage that lead in mid anytime soon. But Goodnight Nick, they can only be happy with that one. It was low cost. It was just the ultimate from Wolfie expended.
Love the early Magus rush, and it just enables plays like this. If he's got Chronos Pendant, there is no world in which Gunter dies. But just a 2-1 barrel stuff the ult, literally. Yeah, give me that. It doesn't get much easier.
Yeah, barrels, because he's a monkey and he's
he's tossing barrels.
That's pretty good.
You're getting it.
Yeah, good stuff, Wolfie. Yeah, I'm not the one getting it. It's Wolfie on the battleground right now, and he is going towards what I believe is a soul gem coming up next for the mid laner. So, good night, Nick. I think can just rest on their laurels. They've established a lead. They've slowed down Cozyx Fanclub. It's all the onus is on Rapio to establish a decent pace for his team, and he has not gone for a proactive gank yet. 45 seconds in, so I think that Goodnight Nick are in a position now where they can just lean back, control neutral farm, and say, all right, word, see you guys at the 25-minute mark.
And Goodnight Nick, as we covered in Game 1, are very comfortable with that playstyle. This game pretty reminiscent of Game 1 so far. Goodnight Nick off to a pretty decent start. Didn't get a first blood, of course, as that didn't come until about the 12-minute mark and for the other side, but felt like Goodnight Nick had a lot of the momentum at that time in the game. But it was Cozyx Fanclub who blew the game wide open with one fight. So Goodnight Nick shouldn't be too comfortable, I don't think, resting on their laurels, but certainly understand the point that they are winning if they keep it at this type of game pace for the next 10 minutes.
Agro, I just realized we never got to hear your spiel on Ganesh. I know you have strong inclinations about this god.
Yeah, he can be really good. It's just rare, especially in competitive. And I don't know if I love him in this draft in particular. He was so good up against for Trixtank up against Coast in this Cozyx Fanclub team, up against Susano ADC, because every time he wants to go in, you just stuff him with the silence. But don't think that's really going to be a problem for you this game, as Deathwalker, again, happy to trade his Blink ultimate for Rapio's ultimate. And I think he's right to be happy with that trade.
Completely agree. Rapio now hamstrung on his rotations into lanes. Both junglers have been very quiet so far this game. It's been a battle of the lanes, and as it stands, no lane, barring mid, has got any significant lead, is what I was going to say until Coast was able to force Streak up into that tier 2 tower. If that ultimate connects, that's a free kill. Would have at least forced the beads and stopped the dash, keeping them right next to each other. And with Crusher early on, Vaporish Coast has much higher fight potential.
That Gallarhorn absolutely slamming in the damage department already for Coast, and Streak up certainly on the receiving end, so he loses his purple, but holds on to the ultimate, holds on to the beads, so not all bad for Goodnight Nick's Hunter. In fact, now it's Coast who's a little bit more vulnerable for the next few minutes, but pretty tough to catch a Heimdall sleeping. He's got information in spades.
Yeah, he can see you coming. He's got a teleport. He still has his beads available, and barring all that, worst case scenario, Calvin's hovering in the wings with Stone's Shield. Vaporish Coast is allowed to take these high-risk plays, knowing that, really, he can fall back just about whenever he wants, wait for that ultimate cooldown to come back up, as Deathwalker has continually been annoying on Cozyx Fanclub's side of the map. They've been stealing the back camps, continually forcing Rapio's ultimate defensively, and just make sure that Bevy Monster has to play on the tip of their toes. Every time Deathwalker rotates out, Bevy has to think, where's he going? Is he headed to mid? Maybe I need to follow him.
Bevy has been chasing Deathwalker around, as Deathwalker has been awfully aggressive this game on the Guardian. This is really the first game where solo lane has not been a massive sticking point for these teams, as both Oracles go Cozyx Fanclub's way. Game 1, it was get the Cthulhu behind, and that worked kind of. It really got Ice Ice behind by forcing him to be there for all the blues and double and triple split them. And that worked out pretty well. Then obviously Game 2 was just absolute pure domination by Ice Ice and Deathwalker on the right side of the map, and that carried them to an easy Game 2 victory. This time around, pretty quiet on that right-hand side. Bit of a change of pace.
The only thing separating these two teams at the 11-minute mark is the first blood bounty, just about 600 gold favoring Goodnight Nick, and experience across the board largely equalized. It's just about 1,000. As Vaporish Coast is hit by the giddy up and forced to take the teleport out, but it's been a quiet accrual of XP for Vaporish Coast. Level 12 to streak up just now, ticking over to level 11, splitting that farm with a Mulesy. Coast has been getting the better end of this lane the entirety of this set. Not a single game has Coast not at least been one level in the lead, and Game 3 not going to be the exception to the rule.
Heimdall once again for him, and this has definitely been a pick that has dominated the EU Challenger circuit throughout this phase. Streak Up being a big part of it is one of the best Heimdall players we have in SMITE, and Vaporish Coast and the rest of the region kind of forced into picking it up because of players like Streak Up and Spudio and these guys who have been really strong on it. E-Chrome, all of those are just absolute beasts on this pick. E-Chrome, I think, one of the ones in particular that comes to mind. And so he's risen to popularity in this region, and Vaporish making it look good yet again. Mealsy on the receiving end of a little bit of poke. And in game paces like this, like we said in Game 1, common for this region, but also common in games where everything's on the line. This is the season for both of these teams. Loser, they don't have to scrim anymore at the very least. They've got that going for them.
And you know what? I've been accused of teams in the past of throwing games like this, so I wouldn't have to as
Coast in trouble. Has to use the beads. Ragnarok is there, but he will survive.
That's time.
Yeah, he is good, but it was close. Coast nearly ended up falling and is a little bit less safe once again, but still survives.
He does, and Calvin rearing his head in the lane, making sure Draugr doesn't go down absolutely for free. So Ice Ice getting involved a little bit early on as Rapio, yet again, forced to use that ultimate defensively. Uses the Scythe too early, does not hit the mini Harpy, so does not receive the heal, as well as not receiving the farm. Loses out on his ultimate cooldown. This Thanatos, am I allowed to say? Non-factor, all right? I haven't seen Rapio get involved.
I was going to ask for player damage, but Wolfie's trying to boost his numbers right now as he's used Tycho Drums once again onto Gunter. Beads forced and Aegis by Calvin's ultimate. That is absolutely psycho, but so is Bevy Monster. He's in. It puts Cozyx Fanclub on the board. Ice Ice up and down, looking for Vaporish Coast, who we know does not have beads, but the pressure not good enough onto him quite yet. Calvin has rolled on through, gotten the scenic tour of that team fight, and is back out. So it's a 1-0. Wolfie falls on the side of Goodnight Nick.
Aggro, if you want to break down that team fight, it's going to have to be you, because I'm having a conniption right now. Yeah. Thanatos, 14 minutes, 20 seconds into the game, has got 0 damage on the board. I am having an actual panic attack on the cast. That is...
Breathe, Mifflin.
Breathe. It's an early game god, bro. Deathsight does like 1,000 on its own. Just throw it at somebody.
Through the mouth.
You've got a global ultimate.
Through the nose.
It's just it's a combat blink for
out
him.
Through the mouth. He's looking for the buff. Okay, I thought he was going to be looking for a gank, but it's the buff.
No, why would he?
Yeah, no. Deathwalker loses his blue.
My man's on a pacifist run.
He's in the lead. He's got a level lead.
I hate it.
He's up 2 stacks of his Transcendence.
Massive.
And a Morningstar.
All
Uncharged.
right. But what's he building the power for if he's not going to use it?
He'll use it eventually.
I hope so. Does it count towards your damage numbers if you execute threshold somebody? Maybe he's actually going for a pacifist run.
I don't know. That's a good question. I don't know if it counts your damage numbers that way. Maybe that would be a cool way to find out. If he just executes someone, did no other damage.
That's the only way you redeem yourself in my eyes,
And
Rapio.
it was a pick. It's for science. Rapio's doing it for science at the very least.
Oh, man. So, Cozyx Fan Club in a 4 versus 5 have been able to remain
I'm just
even.
saying, if Weekend can get roasted for 6-6-7 on Odin jungle,
Uh-huh. Yes.
6-6-7's more.
667 is more, but that was 667 at like 10 minutes. We're 16 minutes in, bro.
I know. I guess this is the.
Well, 667 kind of made Weekend's career. Maybe
I know.
Rapio's just trying to sell a T-shirt.
Oh, smart. That's he's like, yo, Weekend, how'd you do it? He's like, just don't hit anyone.
That's the best
That's
advice
the best
Weekend
way.
can give.
That's the best way to do it. Rapio may be forced into changing the number here on these right side mid harpies, as there is a small grouping. Calvin has a good flank in, but no, Cozyx Fan Club, give it up on that right hand side. Right side mid harpies certainly not worth changing the status of this game over. So it makes sense that Cozyx Fan Club gonna play it a little bit slower. But Wolfie didn't have relics. He does have beads now. 20 seconds till the Aegis is back.
Aggro, it's been a slow-paced game, and I don't imagine that changes here, as Vaporish Coast does try and pepper some damage into Streak Up on the other side. If you are Gunter in this scenario...
Oh, he's looking for it.
Oh, man.
Here we go. Rapio, blink in. Did he hit him? I think he did. And here comes the execute. Do it to him. He got it. 832, and he's on there on the board. And you know what? I like that so much, I might take another. Streak Up falls to Gunter's damage. And now Rapio trying to dance around that he has the quick feet. Ice falls for the double kill. And get my man 3K up in one team fight. Rapio's first 3,008 damage are the most impactful 3,008 damage you've seen in this game.
Cozyx Fan Club now benefiting from a pretty large gold lead 17 minutes in, sitting about 3,000 or maybe about 2,600 in their favor. I was going to ask you if you were Gunter and you found out that your jungler had 0 damage 16 minutes in, how you would react, but that's no longer the case. He is sitting at the 3rd lowest damage in the match.
No problem.
This Thanatos feeling just fine. 5 stacks away from finishing the Transcendence. Now has hi-rez. His burst potential is through the roof. We're talking hovering death, land, auto attack, scythe, auto attack, and you're probably killing somebody exactly there. It just took him a little while to find his feet.
Took him a little bit, but he has arrived in Cozyx Fan Club. Boy, does this feel like game 1, Mifflin. I mean, it's slow pace. Both teams playing very, very
You
calculated.
can't stop him now.
Now my man's on a roll. He's got confidence. That's the last thing you could afford to give to Rapio on this pick. He's up 2 levels now on Ice, but Pyromancer getting low. Ice jumps in, and it's Goodnight Nyx to claim. Rapio not looking for more. Wolfie didn't have beads, but did have Aegis and Ultimate, so probably the right call there from Rapio. A nice little play from Ice. Gets Goodnight Nyx some extra golden experience.
I think Rapio may have been able to stick a little bit closer, try and use the Death Scythe to confirm the Pyromancer, but doesn't want to leave it up to risk, and that would have opened him up to a falling there. Could have fell down. So, instead, Rapio, no stranger to the defensive hovering death, utilizes that to get himself out of that situation, and Cozyx Fan Club may have lost the neutral objective, but still maintain a pretty comfortable gold lead at this point. Experience, though, maybe a different story, is what I would say, if they didn't have that lead as well. 1 level for Vaporish Coast, and Rapio sitting 2 in the lead.
Rapio has the Heartseeker coming. Should be there fairly soon for him as well. Is Calvin gonna have an opportunity maybe for a Blink Ultimate, but doesn't have the info that everyone is right around the corner. Streak Up awfully vulnerable right now without a single relic to his name. That is just a sitting duck there for Thanatos, but Chiron not anywhere on Rapio's radar, at least for the moment. Rapio has Hovering Death already. It's back. 30% CDR is a hell of a drug for a low cooldown ultimate, but Streak Up wary that this could be happening to him playing it smart.
This is the Barracuda special right here,
Yep.
just standing behind the Tier 2 tower. That's something John Salter would be proud to see, and Streak Up is going to do exactly that, realizing that Rapio is hovering nearby, not in death, just in the jungle, as he still has that ultimate available to him. And seems like we've settled back into a slower pace yet again. Not much to fight over at this point, as the easier neutral objectives, the 2 of the 3, Pyromancer and Gold Fury, are already dead. Fire Giant a little bit too risky for either of these teams to look at right now. So keep your eyes on the map. If we see these soul laners rotate out, it could be a siege potential towards these tier 1s in mid. If we see junglers showing up, maybe that pick opens up the door for the biggest neutral objective.
Calvin knocked up, stunned once again. Good damage coming from Wolfie, but not enough to force a full commit. That Spirit Robe pickup from Calvin looking awfully smart. Gets him that extra damage mitigation when he's CC'd, and he was CC'd all right. That ends up not being as damaging as it could have been. Still forces him back to base, but he's a Geb with 30% CDR. He's going to get there pretty quickly with that rollout.
Yeah, 30% CDR, hell of a drug for a Geb. That's an original Mifflin call right there.
Is CDR just good? I don't know.
I think it is.
Weird.
Most items that have it get purchased, question mark?
Yeah.
So, maybe continue to do so. Calvin sitting just fine right now as he's able to peek his head in, see if maybe a red buff invade was in the cards. It was not. Pinged out immediately and spotted, left alone. 4 members of Goodnight Nick hovering around. Could be an opportunity for a mid-siege, but Rapio, he's the soul laner now. He's just farming.
Just farming it up. Getting close to that level 20 mark, trying to race Ice there. And I do believe he should win that. It's Vaporish Coast, the first 20. As per usual, it seems like, on this team. They do a good job of funneling their star player, so he ends up getting to his level 20 mark first. And upgrading. No, he doesn't upgrade the starter. He goes for dominance instead of finishing off that starter item. I suppose that makes sense. The power spike from Charge Morningstar to dominance is pretty big. Charge Morningstar not giving you a whole lot at this point in the game, but dominance very good.
Yeah, but you are sacrificing the Cal, which could have given you a fair stat stick as well as some additional survivability, maybe concerning himself with the front line of Goodnight Nick. He has not made eye contact with Deathwalker a single time this game. I don't think those two have butted heads, and now Deathwalker likely does not want to, considering how much damage output Vaporish Coast has up against these tanks. And Mulesy as well, going to have to play very cautiously as long as this Heimdall is nearby. But it is potentially one of the longest laning phases we've seen. 22 minutes in, everybody just heads back over, waiting for that level 20 mark to recontextualize this game. First set of the day, 4 coming towards you. This is the Game 3 situation. Loser of this one goes home. And generally when the stakes are that high, teams do not take risky plays.
Primal Fury pulled, and Goodnight Nick is just not going to be close enough to contest this, I don't think. Emilzy on the Ganesh does have good objective steal potential, but it is gone. Primal Fury in the back pocket of Cozyx Fanclub, and getting that percentage damage increase and damage taken decrease from these jungle objectives, say Fire Giant namely, matters quite a bit in these slower paced games where you need a little bit of an edge. Primal Fury can provide it around the FG.
And Calvin does have Frenzy available, so if he is given an opportunity with his team, could blow up this Fire Giant pretty quickly. I think Pyromancer a little bit more likely, as it is on the respawn here. And we might see our first 5-on-5 engagement of the match, 23 minutes in. Cozyx Fanclub established the defensive positioning as well as the vision advantage. Goodnight Nick, 3,000 gold down, are grouped up loosely on this side.
Deathwalker blinks in, but can't see the way the Pyromancer trying to do his best Ice impression, but doesn't end up stealing it away this time around, so Cozyx Fanclub secure another small objective. You know, we kind of were talking about Rapio at 0 player damage. Then he pops off, gets 3,008 damage in one fight. That was 10 minutes ago. He still has 3,008 damage.
Well, I'd be mad about it, but we're out of the early game.
Here we go. Blink in from Bevy Monster. Stopped. It going for that one, but Rapio's getting to execute, and he might be finding another. It's a double kill. And my man, when he's doing damage, he means it. It's a triple kill for Rapio. And he might be going for
quad.
It's a quad, and you've got to be kidding me. My man only kills them all whenever he gets in there. Rapio go for it and should be able to succeed.
Calvin!
My domain.
You scum! You absolute trash can! You garbage! F6, you don't deserve it anymore! Rapio has been biding his time for 24 uninterrupted minutes waiting for the pentakill opportunity, and it is stripped away by one stinky Rocky boy! We all hate you, bro! Block him on Twitter!
My God, I can't believe it. And that's how it's going to end, by the way. Rapio goes from 0 to hero, even though he's not playing Hercules. It's a quadra kill for Rapio to send Goodnight Nick to bed. Night on the year for Goodnight Nick, as it's Cozyx Fanclub coming from the SOC and eliminating the SCC contender.
My day is ruined.
He's shaking. He's
I
so mad.
I can't stand that, bro. Geb? That dude didn't even have an escape. You were worried? No, he did that absolutely. I can guarantee you,
intentionally,
this is the
100%.
comms right there.
Uh-huh.
Nice penta. Loser.
Hey, man, Rapio, he gets it. That is so funny. That is so funny that the game we're giving him nonsense
What a narrative
for
arc.
having 0 damage effectively pentakills the enemy team to send them home in an unbelievable performance from them. Commiserations to Goodnight Nick. It was a great season for them, but ultimately they fall a little bit short here at the SMITE Circuit playoffs. We're going to go to break. Mifflin needs to walk this one off.
Hey, girl, I saw you sitting round, but don't be wasting time. I wanna see your smile. Hey, you wanna go with me? I'll be your fantasy. Let's do this secretly. And if you stay the night, yeah, if I do alright, you might be coming back for more. And if you're coming back, we must be on the right track, and I'll be stepping up for sure. If it's alright with you, I'll book a table for 2 at this fancy restaurant. And if you still want me, I'll make sure to be the best you ever had. If I was your man, I'd be the best you ever had. If I was your man, I'd be the best you ever saw, the best you ever had. And we would be as happy as can be. Oh, and I'll give you all that you need. If I was your man, I'd be the best you ever had. Yeah, I'd be the best there ever was. If I was your man, best you ever had.
The Cozyx fan club are able to get it done. Another 3-game set for the SOC qualifying team. And this time they come out on top over a very, very good SEC team here in EU. And the Cozyx fan club will move on. That unfortunately means that Goodnight Nick, will not be moving on. Here's good news. If you love Halloween, you love the spooky time of year, you love pumpkins, you can get paid in gems to carve the best pumpkin. The pumpkin carving contest going on right now. The deadline is October 29th at 11:59 Eastern Time. The moment the clock ticks over to October 30th, you better believe there's no chance that you're submitting that. October 29th by 11:59 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Get your pumpkins in. Whole bunch of gem prizes there for you. Mifflin, I think, has already claimed that he's going to win it, so there's no point. I can personally guarantee you that that is not the case. So carve your pumpkins, send them in, and maybe win some gems here. Make sure just to get it done by October 29th, just prior to midnight. Can't say midnight because then you'll be a little bit later on. We got to look at game number 3 here between the Cozyx Fanclub and Goodnight Nick. And Trelly, we said, this is just a funny one. We said that the game might hinge for the Cozyx Fanclub on whether or not Thanatos can get something done. For the first 15 minutes of the game, literally nothing. 0 player damage. And then ends the game with a stolen penta. I mean, unbelievable the way that this game turns out.
It just seemed like Rapio knew what he was doing, right? You expect this aggression on the Thanatos pick, but he really was out farming. He was getting all the farm he needed, no sort of poke, did not touch a soul. And then he just let the beast out of the cage. Got the I'm going to say he got the penta, but I mean, I guess you're right. Calvin, you know, we've all had a Calvin in our games, and I'm not too happy with that performance. But
how many pentas do you have? Do you know how many pentas you have in your storied Smite career?
I would say probably 9 or 10.
I've been playing Smite for like 2 years. I have a single penta, and that's it. But then I have like 10 or 12 like quads, right? So I guess you're right. You know what? It's always my teammates' fault that I don't have 14 pentas and I have 13 extra quads that I do pentakills. All of this, of course, rooted in what we were talking about with Rapio here. You're right. Look, 0 player damage, that tells you one linear thing, that Rapio had not been fighting for the first 15 minutes of this game. And this was the first time that we saw Rapio engage on a fight. Rapio went into this fight with 0 damage and walked out with like 3K. And it's interesting. I mean, shine a light maybe for me on the Thanatos pick here. We don't see it all that often. But maybe this was the type of scenario where you can make it work, the type of comp that you want to play it into.
Yeah, well, obviously, you're either going for that early aggression or you're executing tanks, right? That's the thought process behind the pick right away. But you're seeing Rapio here, and he's just killing everyone and everything. And Thanatos is one of those characters where every time you get a kill, your cooldown's reset. You get this big HP, and then, I mean, we're going to watch this long chase here, and Calvin just with that grin on his face. Just
because he autos him. Man,
I think he stood there for 15 seconds just watching.
Well, here's the good news, and this is the joy of the SEC playoffs, is we're going to get a chance to, I believe, talk to Coast in a little bit, so we'll get a glimpse behind the scenes at exactly what happened there. So 4 kills for Rapio happened in the final team fight of the game, a couple kills and an assist earlier on when we saw the first player damage trickle on over. Porsche Coast doing his best James Bond here, 007 on the Heimdall. And I think moving forward, now we start to see, and you know, the Heimdall wasn't the spotlight performance, of course, with Rapio doing what he did with the quad. I think Nike had a fantastic game there for Bevy Monster. I wonder, though, if we start to see a return to some Heimdall bans against Vaporish Coast.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, I think it's not even so much that he goes off and gets these big damage games and these big kills. He's unkillable on this character, it seems. Anytime a gank comes his way, he just throws up the one, and he just teleports out. It's not like there wasn't ganks. They came. He was just always out by the skin of his teeth. Even one time the Ragnarok bit down, and he just slid on the way out of there. I mean, he's slippery on this character, and people don't want to deal with it.
Right. It's a pick that if you're giving to Coast, there's a baseline of skill that you're going to be dealing with, and you either just have to accept that that's what you're getting with this Heimdall, or ban it or pick it away for yourselves. The man himself, Porsche Coast, joins me now for the post-game interview. Coast, first and foremost, shine a bit of a light here for me on the pentakill versus Myth. And I want to either put this to bed or keep it going forever, because it feels like every time you play in a game, and we're either with Myth or Myth is casting it, we bring it up. Is that one of life's biggest accomplishments for you, getting a pentakill against Mifflin?
Oh yeah, I was like 12-year-old when I played, and then I've probably ruined his career. My first LAN, 12-year-old getting a pentakill, so you should be quite embarrassed, to be honest. But
the best answer you could have given. All right, let's root this in some seriousness now. Look, you guys come in, you as the Cozyx Fanclub come in as an SOC qualified team At any point, do you feel like an underdog, or do you guys are you playing with the confidence that you can really compete with any team here in the EU SEC?
I mean, yeah, I think we're definitely an underdog. I think many people have predicted us to be the first ones out. It's because we're from Combine, and we're a bunch of SEC rejects, basically. That's what this team is. But I think we're definitely capable of coming top 2. We showed that yesterday with Game 1 against Elysium, so I think we've got to get the win tomorrow, whoever we play against.
Yep, it'll be either Elysium or Joystick, whoever wins the matchup later on today. All right, I have to ask. It wasn't a play that you were stealing anything away. Can you give me a glimpse into the comms there? Rapio on a quad, and then Calvin on the Geb, of all things, steals away the Penta. What's Rapio feeling like in that moment?
Well, Rapio was begging for it, and we all said to leave it. I was leaving it. And Calvin twos him, and then he owes my thing, and he says, "Thank you, goodbye." Rapio doesn't say anything, and he said, "I'm going to block you, and you're getting dropped." So maybe you have to fix something later with that.
Right, you might need to find a new support player before your matches tomorrow.
Yeah.
Look, Coast, you guys have been an absolute treat to watch. Excited for your matchup later on this weekend. Congrats and best of luck in the future.
Thank you.
So one of the we got a lot. What a fun interview that was. So we get to hear that, yes, Coast ending Mifflin's career effectively as a 12-year-old. And I think that's important context here, Trelly. I love that he highlighted that a couple times. I was like 12 and I pented Miff. That's hilarious. But then also that there's clearly there's an underdog mentality to this team, but laced with some confidence, right? They're like, look, SEC rejects. I think that's kind of a funny way of wording it. But this team is playing with some confidence now, and I'm very intrigued how the matchup against Elysium or Joystick will look later on. That, of course, lends itself to our schedule over here in EU. He mentioned that they being the Cozyx Fanclub, proved that they can fight for the top 2 spots in this region with a win in Game 1 over Elysium and then a competitive Game 2 before what was a tough Game 3. Apparently, EU is just going to be 3-game sets all throughout here. And as we move on, look at the bracket that we have so far this weekend, Trelly. I want to look forward to Elysium versus Joystick. Do you think that has the makings of what could be a 3-game set?
I would. Unfortunately, if it's Elysium, I'm always assuming they're gonna just drop that first game, even if they don't get outplayed, they're gonna find a way to drop it just so they can have that come from behind 2-1 there. So regardless, I don't think Team Joystick is one of those teams that's gonna get rolled over by them. But either way, yeah, I think that we are gonna see a 3-game set, and I think it's going to be one that you guys don't want to miss.
Yeah, do not want to miss it at all, especially and I don't know. How can you not root for this Cozyx Fanclub team? None of us on the Casters team rooting for anyone in particular. No bias here. But like everyone else at home, I mean, how can you not root for an underdog team like that? Especially, and again, I want to bring things back to this. Whatever happens here between Elysium and Team Joystick, the loser of this next matchup will drop down, face the Cozyx Fanclub tomorrow for the one final spot in the EU finals. And so I think that could potentially be a 3-game set. There's something about EU that's bringing us all these fireworks here this weekend. But the winners bracket, the next matchup there Elysium versus Team Joystick will be coming up next. You don't want to miss it. More action around the corner.